Number 10 in the countdown is the kayak. Its true name is the hayak, but foreigners didn't know how to pronounce this word, and when they read it, they dubbed the unmanned boat a kayak. The hayak was used for over 2,000 years by the Inuit, with the exception of those in the most northern regions. A little too cold for it there. This small narrow boat was created by the Inuit in the Arctic region of Canada. It's a piece of ingenuity. The cockpit was closed to avoid the passenger from sinking if the craft were to capsize, something that was completely unique at the time. These crafted transportation boats were created with wood or whalebone frames and covered with stitched sealskin or other animal pelts. They were perfect for the transportation of goods, travel, and hunting, allowing Inuit means of exploring Arctic geography and landscape while also accessing natural resources and other communities of Inuits. Oral tradition tells us that this was not only an item of practicality, however, but also one of personal growth and connection to self and community. Today, the kayak is used by many for leisure, sports, tourism, and competition. Number 9 is baby bottles and formulas. The baby bottle has been found in a few northern indigenous clans' histories, Iroquois and Seneca being the prime examples. The baby bottle of the past is drastically different from the plastic and silicon model found in stores today. Water skins were used by ancient Egyptians and global indigenous colonies alike, but the indigenous inventors made some changes so as to use them to accommodate babies. First, they did not use goat skin like the Egyptians, but rather the dried then greased bag-shaped stomachs of their large prey like boars, bears, and buffaloes. Secondly, they learned to attach a bird quill on the end of the intestinal piece to act as a nipple to create the first baby bottle. According to the Iroquois historian Arthur C. Parker, the intestinal tube would be filled with a mix of pounded meats, berries, and nuts. It was cooked until the mixture inside turned into a warm paste or liquid. Another baby food or milk alternative was corn and water mixtures. Number 8 was better when we didn't have to pay rent for them. It's apartments. Indigenous colonies around the world executed the same idea. Many people residing in the same building, but in different ways. In Southern America, the Anasazi may have moved south after the warfare decimated their population, but their historic community still stands. The Anasazi were masters of the humble yet expansive identical apartments. Before the arrival of Europeans, indigenous peoples in Canada had their own building traditions. Differing from nation to nation depending on their purpose and function, the building traditions reflected the important aspects of indigenous peoples' cultures, societies, geographics, environments, and spiritual beliefs. In eastern woodlands, Iroquois, Haudenosaunee, Wendat, and others' characteristic dwelling was the longhouse, a metaphor for life wherein families gathered and ceremonies assembled. It looks as it sounds, long and narrow in structure and meant to house several families related through the female lineage. A village would oftentimes be a group of these longhouses surrounded by pole-based fences. Another example is the wigwams, which was generally housing 1 to 3 families and were used in eastern woodlands and subarctic regions. Wigwams were able to be disassembled and reassembled for those who moved with the season or with the hunting. Imagine that, you hate your neighbor, you can just pack up your whole house, head out. Number 7, let's check out the raised bed agriculture. One of the most famous examples in the Inca dynasty, historians and archaeologists were mind blown to discover the Incas understood water irrigation, underwatering, floating farms and gardens, and raised bed agriculture. The indigenous of South and Central America invented the technique of enriching soil and piling it to build raised garden plots called chinampas on swampy land and in lakes, a forerunner model now used for modern vegetable farming. Well, this practice spread from Mesoamerica to other indigenous colonies of South and Central America and then further. The Three Sisters, which are corn, beans, and squash's method of growing, showed up along the East Coast and Great Lakes of Canada. The raised beds allowed for control over the growing environment, something that wild planting could not. But unlike that style of row agriculture, the 3 plants were allowed to grow together, creating a microenvironment for ripe growth. The sisters were only to be segregated by blocks and mounds to keep them free from weeds. Scared of heights? Number 6 isn't, it's suspension bridges. That's right, in ancient times, people were constructing bridges. Wanna get stressed? Let's talk about the materials used. In South America, the Inca figured out how to weave certain mountain grasses and other plants into thick ropes that could be used to make bridges. The Incas were the only pre-industrial American culture to invent long-span suspension bridges, said to have rigged 200 plus bridges bridges across gorges and cliffs. In another rugged region, the Himalayans seemed to independently develop suspension systems at pretty much the exact same time, albeit they were different. But the Europeans didn't have the know-how until several centuries later after the Inca Empire fell. Embarrassing. Northwest BC is home to some suspension bridges made of wood systems. The best known is the bridge over the Buckley River at the Baghdad Canyon. The design theory is similar to that of the Inca and Himalayan, the strongest point extending outwards from the edges and then a gangway tied to join the two halves in the center point. The physics of these historic bridges was something European and American engineers copied for our modern bridges in the early 20th century. You can visit the last standing suspension bridge made by the ancient Inca of South America in Peru, Canas province. Dare you to walk across. Forward date bank checks are number 5 because its continuation has caused modern day Turkey to have a relative immunity to the global banking crisis. This practice actually came to be due to the Quran chapter 2 verse 282. The verse is quite long, otherwise I would quote it directly, but instead I will summarize that all debts must be kept in writing on paper under the written guarantee of 2 witnesses and with an expiry date, rendering every citizen to a bank and creating paper money when these debt papers were transferred. To ensure the fairness of any documentation, it's one of the only times where 2 women could actually substitute for 1 man as a witness. This is to guard against the possibility that one witness may marry the other. But this practice is actually banned in the West. While there's a lot of debate as to why, the main opinion is that it was simply the Westerners being mad or confused about how something worked in a region that wasn't theirs and banning it in their own, like how the Vikings being clean was slanderous to Brits. No matter what, the Turkey banking infrastructure saw pure benefit from this forward dating. Number 4 is medical tools. The Ottomans contributed hugely to modern medicine and the understanding of conditions, something we'll talk about a little later in the countdown as well. Ottoman surgeons, yes, they were doing surgeries way back then. They were first using bamboo shoots, shells, and even their cleaned fingers as their surgical equipment. They learned how to stimulate bladders externally to help surgical patients relieve themselves as well, like a human catheter. For these reasons, the Ottomans, with their stash of precious metals, went to work inventing forceps, scalpels, pincers, lancets, and the catheter itself. All of the modern versions of these listed surgical items are direct recreations of the Ottoman Empires, advanced to be suitable in our modern times. Also, usually thrown away after 1 use. Additionally, I'd be remiss not to mention how they inspired modern medicine by establishing the first hospital and health centers. But wait, there's more. The healthcare was then divided based off of patient sex and treated them completely separately, even training female physicians to try and aid in the comfort of female patients in a male-dominated medical field. They also adopted the holistic approach to treatment. They believe that when a person is sick, it affects the total being, including the physical and spiritual aspects. Number 3 is data protection laws. So similar to the forward date checks, this little thing has made a huge difference in the long run. The Ottoman Empire was extremely complex in terms of its multiple legal systems and hundreds of ethnicities and religions. So they began to document everyone and everything and base records on them, preserved in a Shari Deftered record book. Obviously, this data had to be correctly entered and double-checked with whom it was about to ensure its accuracy. Obviously, this employed many people to do, and there was even developed control techniques and cipher shorthands to make the process quick and efficient and detailed. On top of that, if a page was to be ripped, removed, stained, torn, anything that created an inconsistency or damaged records, it was punishable by death. Ottomans developed multi-religious, multi-ethnic governmental system where each community had its own legal, educational, and social services. Nothing like that it was really the same in our modern world. Meanwhile, tucked away under cities, in museums, and in government buildings are millions of books waiting to be decoded, read, translated, and analyzed at the Ottoman archives. Number 2, we revisit what I promised, psychiatric care. Revolutionary is a great word for the Ottoman understanding of mental illness and disorders. Nowhere else was this level of understanding really found at the time, which was over 20 plus diagnosable mental illnesses that they named, wrote descriptions for, and learned how to treat. Now obviously they're different from our modern terms, but they're actually very accurate and symptoms were well recorded. Some are incredibly descriptive, capturing conditions we see today such as BPD, depression, insomnia, but also things like sleep apnea, epilepsy, and dyslexia, and so many other more conditions. Even nicotine, alcohol, and opium addiction is documented. These classifications are found in the Ottoman medical manuscripts between the 15th and the 18th centuries. A majority of neurological illnesses are mentioned under the title of diseases of the head, and this is because illnesses caused by a central peripheral nervous system were, well, physically in your head, so they felt it counted with mental illness. So, knowing what they did, the Ottomans catered to it. They built separate health facilities for people with traumas and mental illnesses where they were cared for and looked after until their release or until they passed. These properties had gardens, recreation activities, books, songs, and lots of access to fresh water and beautiful scenery. All of these items were believed to return a person to themselves so that they may feel whole and healed again. Music also played a factor in healing. In fact, music therapy is #1 in our countdown. The Ottomans believed that the cosmos were created by the word ka, as ordered by the universe's creator. This means that the beginning of the cosmos was started by a sound. So because of the belief that God was comprehended through a spoken word or sound that were also perceived as a letter, the essence of existence is believed to be a sound. Letters were believed to be the representation of human essence as a result. This correlation played an important part in the belief that music therapy might re-establish the upset harmony of a patient, creating a sane balance between body, mind, and emotions. Patients suffering from certain illness or the emotions of persons with certain temperament were expected to be influenced by specific modes of music. Certain makams, musical notes, were prescribed for therapeutic purposes. Modes put into patterns, songs, were believed to express special meanings. Though there are about 80 Turkish modes, usually only 12 were prescribed in therapy in accordance to the limitation of the related theories of cosmic elements and numerology, as it is in the Islamic and ancient sources. From old texts we can deduce the kind of music which was supposed to cure a certain kind of disease or create certain feelings and favor certain behaviors, though musical modes of those days are not the same as the ones we know today.
Number 10. Daylight motion pictures. I saw Avatar 2 last night and I shit you not, the lights did not turn off for the first 5 minutes of the movie. Yeah, it was chaos. People were yelling, ushers were throwing their visors at the lights, it was chaos on Pandora. You need complete darkness to enjoy a movie. For personal preference, obviously, but for the projector's sake, we need to see the damn light, okay? It has to work. Back in the 1910s, daylight motion pictures were normal for a hot minute. Can you believe that? This trend moved across the country right after a bill was passed. So theaters went from dark and enjoyable to bright enough that you can now see who's sitting next to you in 4K with your real eyes in a bright room. It was a safety hazard for theaters to not have the lights on. Can you imagine if this stuck around? I would be so pissed. Just this bright the entire movie, we're like, alright, I think it's the Avengers, I don't know. Number 9, spray on hair. The babes are back. Yeah, that's what this real advertisement says about spray on hair. The babes are back. Look, I'm 28 and I know that a lot of guys have bad luck hair-wise at this age. This spray is not the solution, okay? This spray is not it. Just don't, this isn't it, my guy. This early 1990s product did not sweep the nation. Men did not regain their youth for $39.99 plus shipping. Didn't happen. It just looked like spray painted cobwebs. You know what I mean? It was like wet. It was very Halloween wet. It had like that damp, dewy morning look. I don't know. The advertisement legit says the babes are back. Yeah, which implies that the babes noticed his bald spot, decided as a group, you know, they had a meeting, made it official, and then they all left. Which is just not true. Women love bald guys. Vin Diesel, The Rock, Patrick Stewart, Professor X, are you kidding me? He summons the babes back. He's like, come. Number 8, ab belts. All right, here we go. Perfect product for the guys who want an 8-pack without doing any of the work. Just gotta shake your shit around. This is horrible. You're gonna shit your pants doing this. The ab belt sounds too good to be true, and that's because scientifically it is. Ab belts in the 90s were as hot as Tom Hanks was at the time. It was crazy. Everybody had one of these in their household. I think we may have had one growing up, now that I think of it. An ab belt, did I have it? Maybe. I don't know what it was. We also had a bowling ball growing up, so I don't know, parents are weird in the 90s. Science can confirm that wearing an ab belt has no real benefit whatsoever. It does not make you strong like Thor. That's not how it works at all. If your company is thinking about making false claims, well, expect real lawsuits to follow. Number 7, walking sleeping bag. Dare I say a perfect gift for the sleepwalker in the household. Here we go. A sleeping bag, but with footholes. and a face hole. Also, no holes for the arms, just legs and face holes. That's it, 1, 2, 3. I can't think of a more dangerous product to possibly sell. Now, as somebody who has broken his front teeth twice, I can say with full confidence this is the worst product in history. One misstep and you're just watching your oncoming doom right in front of you, and you can't even stop with your hands. I get it, on paper this thing sounds cozy for a few minutes, and sure, I guess it's fun, but what about when you can't find the zipper inside? Then what? Now you're David Copperfield and you're trying to escape death. I hate sleeping bags in general. Do you sleep in sleeping bags? I hope not. If so, get out. I don't know, get a blanket. I don't know, I'm put myself into a hole. Number 6, portable record players. Remember when iPods came out and it was like 1,000 songs in your pocket? That was a big deal. That actually changed the game. You know, technology-wise, that was it. We went up from there. Portable record players, not so much. That's like 8 songs in your pocket. That's really nothing in comparison right there. Back in the 80s, right before cassette players and Walkmans hit the street, this was the only way to listen to music on the go. That would really suck. That's horrible. That's like a really hot period of time there. And it looks so silly too, obviously. The thing's so big. I don't think records are meant to be on your person with headphones. Like, what are you, Mozart? What are you doing? What is this that you have attached to your waist? It looks like an IED. Get this off. This is terrible. A portable record player is not a good idea, now or then. In order to enjoy Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons, you of course had to remain completely still. You're like, hey guys, come on, listen. Nobody can move. Number 5. Ancient Greek fire. Okay, this one's pretty epic. It's not, I mean, it's horrible. It's pretty rough history here, but definitely interesting nonetheless. Greek fire was used by the Eastern Roman Empire from the 7th to the 12th century. Now, the formula for Greek fire was a closely guarded secret, which is like so villainous, but it's believed to have contained petroleum, quicklime, and other combustible substances, all in one soup. Just a big hot mess. Something you don't want to drop, really, ideally. Greek fire was delivered using a flamethrower-like device on a boat called a siphon, and it was capable of igniting on water, making it a very reliable weapon against any ship out there. Yeah, they would shoot hot fire through a giant syringe at enemy ships. Ancient history is cool, it's impressive, but it's also, most of the time, brutal. It's disgusting. My God. Number 4, mechanical clocks. Look, we all love an hourglass, all right? I love an hourglass. Playing a board game with the family, you aggressively flip that thing down, no better feeling, right? Tick-tock, sands a swirling. But why don't we have an hourglass anymore? Why don't we use those? Those are pretty sweet. It's a pretty amazing invention. Let's talk about those for a bit. During the medieval period, the invention of mechanical clocks revolutionized timekeeping and replaced the use of hourglasses. One guy's like, what? I loved these though. That's me, I'm the guy. Mechanical clocks were first invented in Europe in the 13th century, and they were initially used in public spaces, like churches, town squares, stuff like that. These early clocks relied on the energy generated by falling weights to power their movements. Yeah, you're not gonna have one of these next to your bed. Not for a while, at least. Mechanical clocks allowed for more precise timekeeping and helped standardize time across different regions, but back then it was scary. Back then it was weights and big things bonging around above your head. It's like, what time is it? I don't know. The only one we got. Number 3. The blast furnace. This one was also quite important. All these are pretty important, but this one's, you know, wasn't used to destroy a human being, so it's good. The blast furnace. It's a medieval invention that revolutionized the production of iron, which is so key. We love that over here in Steamville with iron everywhere. I don't know, there's trains literally all around us. It was first introduced in Europe during the 14th century, and it quickly became a game changer. The furnace's design allowed for higher temperatures and more efficient use of fuel, leading to increased iron production and, most importantly, lower costs, which, yeah, blacksmiths love this, you know, they hate this one trick. The blast furnace would also enable the production of higher quality iron that was suitable in wider ranges of applications, which again, we love that. We love when iron just stays in one spot. Usually it's how we like our iron. We made better, faster iron. I don't know, what a day. It sounds like a Daft Punk song. Harder, better, faster iron. This invention spread across Europe, of course, with many regions becoming iron production hot zones. A lot of blacksmiths in the area, a lot of beards. Single blacksmiths in your area. Just swipe, here we go. Number 2, the printing press. I'm not a fan of homework, but I get it. It's gotta be done sometime. The printing press, of course we have to include this. This was a revolutionary invention during, again, the medieval period that allowed for the mass production of books and pamphlets. I love pamphlets, thank God. Love me a good pamphlet. I love flipping things only thrice and then closing it. That's it. No more than 3. Invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century, the printing press could reproduce text more quickly, and again, it was pretty cheap considering what came before. You had to pay a guy to do everything. That's crazy. You gotta listen to him all day? No. You gotta feed him? No. This had quite the impact on society and enabled wider access to knowledge, the spread of ideas, and it contributed to the growth of literacy, which again, we love that. Still leading towards that one. The printing press played a key role in the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation, and it may or may not have helped lay the foundation for the modern world. So I guess, yeah, we can put this close to number 1, I would say, or number 2 is pretty good. And finally, number 1, flutes. Yeah, we're ending on flutes. The best, right? We had to learn it for 3 years in school. Why? Couldn't tell you. No idea. We had to do it though. Music has been in the air for a very, very long time. Neanderthals enjoyed a flute every now and then. Who would have thunk? They weren't playing We Three Kings like us, you know, but they were making music as early as 50,000 years ago, which is just baffling. The first instrument known to man was most likely our vocal cords, but the second instrument were the flutes of Geistenkloster Cave. They're the oldest musical instruments ever that have ever been discovered. Period. They were made from bird bone and the ivory of a mammoth. Yeah, if that's any indication how old they are, they made music out of mammoth ivory. Again, I still can't play the recorder. I never learned. I was useless. My fingers were too long. I'd always like slip off the holes. I got Jack Skellington fingers. I can't play a recorder. No way. Number 10, the Slugbot. Kind of recent, but we'll go back. We'll go back to the ancient days. The 2021 Slugbot is a robotic device that was created by researchers at the California Institute of Technology, and this robot is designed not to help you with your homework, but instead help farmers manage crops without harmful pesticides. Pretty good, right? No more helicopters dropping random sprays on you. That's always fun. The Slugbot uses artificial intelligence, a little scary, but here we go. It uses AI to detect and identify pests such as slugs, and it applies a targeted non-toxic solution to then, well, eliminate them. Little slug terminators going back in time to get rid of pests and problems. Love that. The device moves autonomously through the fields, navigating itself around plants and obstacles, and operates quietly to avoid disturbing wildlife. That's awesome. A quiet robotic slug is somewhere out there. Watch your step. Just, you know, be light on the toes. Number 9, the BitBite. The BitBite is it's technology designed to improve eating habits and promote a healthier lifestyle. Again, I'm not sure I'm going to use this one. I like just eating chips without any voice in my head telling me to stop. That's how I like them. Dill pickle? See you later. It's a small wearable device that clips onto your earlobe and it monitors eating behaviors in real time. It tracks the number of bites, the speed of your eating, and the duration of meals, providing instant feedback and coaching you right there in your earlobe to encourage mindful eating habits. So while you're eating, it'll be like, slow down. You're like, well, good call. Thank you, Siri. That's good. BitBite also integrates with a mobile app, of course, right? You got to connect it all, which allows users to set personalized goals, track your progress, and receive personalized recommendations based on your eating patterns. You're like down today, he's like, I think it's burger day. I think it's definitely a burger day. With its advanced sensors and AI algorithms, BitBite has the potential to revolutionize the way that we approach nutrition and healthy eating without it being, boring and all charts and labels and stuff. Now it's just a voice, a literal voice in your ear telling you, don't eat that. No, you don't need sour keys today. Let it go. Number 8, Ornithopter. This one's good. This one's from Dune. It's the thing that goes really loud in IMAX. It's so good. The Ornithopter is very real and not as cool as in the movie Dune, but it was something. It was a type of aircraft that uses flapping wings to generate lift and propulsion, almost like a dragonfly. The concept of an ornithopter has been around since ancient times, but the first manned flight of a powered ornithopter was back in 1963. It's weird. I have a dragonfly tattoo that says 1963 on it. I'm like, yeah, I was there. I saw the whole thing. I was one of them. This historic flight was achieved by Dr. Paul MacCready. He was an American engineer and inventor at the time. Now his ornithopter, God, I wish I had one now. His ornithopter, called the Gossamer Condor, this one had a wingspan of 96 feet and it was powered by pedaling a bicycle-like mechanism. You'd have to go quite fast if you wanted to get up there. Great for the legs, good leg day workout. The Gossamer Condor flew for a distance of 1,163 meters, reaching an altitude of 15 feet. That is amazing. The Wright bros are like, we can't beat that, but we'll try. We'll definitely try. Number 7, newspapers. We still have newspapers around. We still have some people hucking them on your doorstep, I guess, if that's still a thing. Haven't seen that in a bit. I feel like we're on the last leg with newspapers. You know what I mean? They had a decent run though, okay? To be fair, they've been around for a while. What do they got? 131 BC to wherever iPhones were invented? That's not a bad go. That's not bad at all. 131 BC to iPhones. That's not a bad run. That's pretty good. In ancient times, daily acts and events that were often recorded and disseminated through newspapers known as acta diurna, or daily acts, also known as newspapers. These newspapers were introduced during the Roman Empire around 131 BC, and it contained news and accounts of daily events such as public speeches, trials, and ideally military victories. The newspapers were written in Latin and they were posted in public places for citizens to read. They were an important source of information for citizens in Rome. In fact, they were the only form of communication back then, so it was important. It was like an audition. As soon as the list goes up, as soon as that paper's posted, everyone rushes over to take a look. What happened? Who died? Who was it? The tradition of daily newspapers, of course, continued in various forms throughout history, eventually evolving into our modern day newspaper industry. Or now I just go, oh, what's on Twitter? This person died. Nice, that's sad. Number 6, electric light bulbs. This one here, yeah, it's a bit important, I guess. Without light bulbs, well, you wouldn't be able to see my pale Victorian era complexion right now. But now we got 1,000, so you can see every imperfection on my face. But thanks to Humphrey Davy, the world is a little brighter with electric light bulbs. Humphrey Davy was a British chemist, and he was famous, of course, for inventing the very first electric light in 1802. He created a battery-powered arc lamp, which consisted of 2 charcoal rods that were connected to a battery and then brought close together to produce this, well, light. This first ever electric arc that changed history. This arc produced a bright light that could be sustained for several hours, which today would suck, but back then, that's game-changing. Although Davy's electric light was not practical for widespread use yet due to its high cost and short lifespan, it was still a significant step towards lighting technology and where we are now in the future, and it paved the way for further research and development in this field. Again, pretty important. Davy's invention also had a profound impact on other areas, such as electrical power generation and distribution. So now we have clap-on, clap-off lights. That's crazy. If you could only see that was his dream. He wanted an electric arc and then he wanted to clap it off. He's like, yes, I've done it. Number 5, Google Glass. Smart eyewear technology. That's cool. You want to feel like Tony Stark? Sure, I get the idea. Ideally, when it's worked out, this pair of shades can make you a little bit of a superhero, okay? It's able to display information and content in a similar way that a smartphone would, only, hands-free. It would be only voice control, wearing a heads-up display like Google Glass or even a modified version of VR. Now or later, I don't know if I'm on board, to be honest with you. These can contribute to eye fatigue and may cause visual confusion. And also, this may mess with your memories, scientists say. You'll get a pop-up in the middle of your kid's first birthday and your whole memory is just ruined forever, you know what I mean? I don't want that. I don't want a computer or notifications anywhere around me. My phone's bad enough, let alone Google Glass. Middle of a conversation, a really dirty pop-up comes up, you're getting coffee with your parents, you're like, close, please. Number 4, robots. Oh God, here we go. We're at a point now where robots can straight up do parkour. Boston Dynamics is trending every other week. Half the time I can't tell if their videos are real or fake. These robots are just too impressive. Sophia the robot. Yeah, she's been on talk shows. She's a fun time. Let's talk about her for a bit. Sophia the robot is the first robot to ever receive citizenship from a country. Can you believe that? She's legally from Saudi Arabia. Sophia is a citizen, and this robot citizen was on talk shows saying how she wants to destroy humans. And then everybody around on the talk show laughed and went along with the bit. Could this slowly be underway? Is this a marketing ploy? I don't know. Either way, I don't like when robots say again, hey, call me old school. I don't like when robots do shit. Number 3, flying cars. Where we're going, we still need roads. Ideally, Marty, let's do it. Even scarier than self-driving cars. Cars that fly. I never want this, personally. I can't even parallel park now, let alone in the air. Know what I mean? This idea started to get real back in 2017. You may have seen it online. The concept of a futuristic hover car was revealed officially. It was called the Renault Float Car, and it wasn't as cool as we thought, but it's a step, definitely a step forward. There's numerous companies working on a floating car right now, and to be honest, by 2024, we could actually see these things on the road. So heads up or forward. I don't know, just stay awake on the road. Just drive, please. Number 2, mood rings. Okay, for these last 2, we're gonna jazz it up a little bit. I'm gonna pick 2 inventions that thought they changed the game, but really, they didn't at all. This 70s invention was a real gem. Pun, we got it. The mood ring, as far as fads go, not the best, not the worst. It's nothing like our number 1 spot, but it's quite close. The stone that would change its appearance due to your body heat. That was the magic of it. But some folk actually let this ring make decisions for them in real life. The mood ring was the bee's knees all around town. Joshua Reynolds and Maurice Ambatz created them in 1975. They added some love, or some lies rather, to the mix, and now we got a popular fad. Yellow meant that you were nervous. Blue meant that you were relaxed. And red obviously meant that you were mad, right? Of course. Ugh, take your ring back and your $8. They sold 40 million rings in just a few months alone, making around $20 million in sales. All for a ring that just likes your body heat. My mood ring says that I'm angry after hearing that fact. So let's move on. Finally, number 1. Silly bands. Oh boy, where do I even start with these ones? I remember taking part of this craze when I was in high school. I had like 11 of these all wrapped around. Zero circulation, but you know what? I was cool. They were literally just rubber bands that made a silly shape. And most of the time, the shapes weren't even that silly. It would just be an anchor or a hammer. That's not silly at all. The same team that made the Livestrong bracelets were responsible for silly bands, and by 2010, thousands of stores were selling them. It was hot. You couldn't even buy these things, honestly. They were sold out, I remember. I was part of the mob trying to get those silly bananas. Classrooms had to ban these because they were too distracting. How embarrassing is that? The iPad came out in 2010, yet they had to ban silly bands in the classroom. We love it. Silly bands made over 100 million a year. I'd say it's worth it for that guy. The guy's swimming inside of his house now because we wanted the $ shape wrapped around our wrist for some reason. So you know what? He got us. Eat the rich. I'm like, yeah, eat the rich, but stop buying silly bands at the same time. Know what I mean?
Such as number 10, Basilica Cannon. So I really have been out here thinking all the types of cannons were just like big and small. I didn't really know they had actual names, but the Ottoman Empire's military technology was obscenely advanced, featuring firearms, gunpowder, and now cannons, thanks to their inventor, Orban, and the Emperor Constantine of the Byzantine Empire. See, Orban offered to sell his ingenious invention to this emperor, but Constantine couldn't afford the price. His attempts to bargain just dissuaded Orban from selling it to him even more. So Orban sold the cannon to the Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed the Conqueror, who was practically salivating at the mouth when he learned that this device could smash through walls with a giant projectile. After purchasing these cannons and their 3-month build time, he used them to defeat Constantinople in 1453, taking only 53 days to take over the city and the Sultan's status. The cannonball, which could be shot at a distance of 1 mile, weighed 1,200 pounds. Due to its size, it was dragged by 60 oxen and 400 men. Additionally, due to the material the cannon was constructed of, the intense heat created by the charge after each shot made the barrel have to be soaked in warm oil to prevent cold air from penetrating and enlarging the fissures, and it prevented it from being fired more than 3 times a day. Ultimately, it only lasted 6 weeks before it became non-functional, and the loading and transport of the cannon killed some of its operators. For a first-time invention, I'd say that's at least still a pretty good track record. Number 9 is a water pump, a 6-cylinder monoblock water pump to be exact. Now this is an insane and impressive invention. Created in 1550, it was innovative and made to run off of the water it pumped. So piston rods, lead weights, and then of course the delivery pipes all worked as part of a system of an oscillating water recycling and pumping device. The use of water wheel technology was widely spread in the Middle East before and after Islam. It's from this long-lasting heritage that Muslim engineers adopted and improved this technology and applied it everywhere. In the city of Murcia, for example, during the Islamic rule of Spain, a water wheel was established, still known today under the name La Aurora. Although the original wheel has been replaced by a new one in steel, the original system that was built for it is otherwise unchanged. Muslim engineers used 2 solutions to achieve maximum output from a water mill. The first solution was to mount them to piers of the bridges to take advantage of the increased flow. The second solution was the ship mill, a type of water mill powered by water wheels mounted on the sides of ships moored in the midstream. It seems, according to historians of technology, that the earliest descriptions of this kind of machine in the West goes back to Cardan in 1550 and Ramelli in 1588, meaning that Taki was amongst the first to describe this water machine as he finished his manuscript in 1551-52, and that made him the first to produce the actual machine when he built it. Furthermore, it proved a remarkable invention as it helped with the water supply to the city's empire. Number 8 is the invention of mechanical clocks. So as you may know from our past Ottoman video, the Ottomans were incredibly advanced in astrological and celestial body understanding. That's how they achieved observatories and also astronomical clocks that indicated the positions of the bodies like sun, moon, and other planets. Taqi al-Din's, yes, the guy who did the water pump from the last segment, created a clock that could set off an alarm at a specific time. And while the alarm clock wasn't necessarily new, users could actually set Taqi's clocks to go off at a specific time because of the peg he placed close to the dial wheel. When the dial dial was set to a specific time, the peg would set off the ringer when the clock arm touched the time. This was also the first clock capable of indicating hours, minutes, and seconds, aka he essentially invented time of day. This was obviously a significant breakthrough. All clocks existing before were inaccurate or still sundial based and couldn't be relied on for correct astronomical data. But Duchesne's invention meant that the world can now record accurate astronomical information. Logos are number 7. That's right, they've had a long journey to what they are now, with glowing neon signs, the branding on our jeans, the image on your favorite soda can. All of it is traced back to the Ottomans and their invention of tugra, an imperial trademark where writing takes picture form to denote a branding. How this started, according to legend, was an illiterate sultan who had followed the sacred practice of the sultan's silence, but he could also not sign. So, in order to tell his name, he once dipped 3 fingers in ink and then impressed them on a page. As a result, 3 lines are virtually unchanged and remained in all Sultan tugras to come. All of their tugras included the 3 lines as well as 2 ovular loops on the side and the Sultan's name, his father's name, and the phrase eternally victorious. While all tugras had those features, they were all changed and unique to each sultan. All sultans as well as princes would have their own tugra, which court artists created anew with each ruler's succession. Perhaps the best historical examples are not so much the very similar sultan logos, but the kind of graphic symbol tugras used by the Ottoman officials on documents, coins, and other objects, as well as to mark buildings. Pastrami is gonna be number 6 because why not? Meat preservation outside of North America's indigenous clans goes back to the Romans and the Huns, but the Ottomans' take on it has become a widespread comfort food. Here's how. The Ottomans advanced meat preservation methods by slow drying quality meat, oftentimes beef, goat, duck, or mutton, with days of smoldering or pressure, then further preserving it with herbs, spices, and of course salt. There are even records of making pastrami by placing the meat in saddlebags where it was pressed against the rider's legs as they rode. So the result was a jerky-like meat, deep in color, strong in flavor. Because of the spices used and the meat's portability, the recipe migrated along the spice route of Eastern Europe before landing in the lap of Romania, where an adapted version of the recipe traveled with Romanian Jews to Lower East Side New York when fleeing persecution. Jewish Romanians began to make this preserved deli meat with beef as it was the most available, and due to the advent of refrigerators, they were also able to use a weaker salt brine and develop a softer form of cured meat, which was finally named pastrami. The current version in Turkey is made by rubbing beef in salt to cure it, drying it in open air for several days, and covering it with a thick spice rub, original to its tougher, jerky origins.
Number 5. Automatic smoking machines. When I read about this, I actually laughed my ass off for like a minute straight. I get some of these inventions, or where these inventions were trying to go. Like an indoor saddle, sure, that's fun, I guess, if you want it to be. The mask at the time was thought to have beauty benefits. The automatic smoking machine was all bad. I don't see any good thing about this thing. It's not even designed well. It looks like shit in the corner. It was just a machine that smoked all of your cigarettes. Yeah, it smoked them automatically and then blew the smoke all over your curtains. What a great invention. Nice, 10 out of 10. Gotta review that. What a perfect addition to the family. This thing, first of all, was not small. It was not petite. It looked like a saw trap placed in the corner. It was so Victorian and scary looking. There's gears and pulleys and there's smoke pluming out of random places. It's like having a choo-choo train in your house. Who wants this? A choo-choo train that gave you lung cancer. Nice, score. Merry Christmas. Yeah, fire it up. It only takes 80 cigarettes at a time. I know. Number 4, the surprise chair. Are you tired of sitting down on chairs that, stay still and don't immediately topple back once you apply any amount of pressure? Well, don't I have just the thing for you? Here we go. The surprise Victorian chair. I guess it was invented for laughs in a world before Netflix. Sure, I guess you have to be creative. There's no sign of practicality in this patent, so we're gonna go ahead and assume that these 1800s folks, they were hilarious. They loved a practical gag. I'm not even gonna say prank. Don't even make me say prank, YouTube. Not saying the P word. The patent shows the exact science here and what it takes to surprise your guest and then have them topple to the ground. I go, ah ha ha, then you bring them back up and then give them the real chair. This is a prank gift, and if we've learned anything in time, getting prank gifts, it only works once. So once you get your pal to take a topple in the 1800s, you would then have to store this heavy, antique, horrible looking heavy chair somewhere in your home and then bring the real chair back. Again, it sounds like way too much effort for a very low payoff. Imagine that, 400-pound chair. They're like, gotcha. All right. Who next? Number 3, toilet troubles. Now, the Victorian era, it was It was unsanitary, to say the least, sure, but it was also dangerous in ways that you wouldn't expect. Some random poo-poo signs coming out of you. One of the greatest Victorian inventions was the bathroom. I love this one, it's great. Now, it took a few tries to figure out the whole methane gas problem, but we did it. Yeah, spontaneous combustion of the bathroom was weirdly common in the V era. Flammable gases like methane and hydrogen sulfide, well, they built up over time with human waste, and more human waste, and just, well, so much shit and gases. It built up in the sewers and eventually it backed up into our homes. Next thing you know, you're lighting a candle and then your bathroom's gone and you're gone and there's shit everywhere and it's the Victorian era and you're like, what do I even do right now? What just happened? What science was that? Number 2, the wave rockin' bath. Seaside at home, let's do it. Are you tired of regular bathtubs that are stationary, relaxing, and don't soak your entire floor in minutes? Well, the Niagara wave rockin' bath washes all that away. Yep, see you later. This bathtub was designed to rock, literally. It kept your blood in active circulation, apparently, and it only required 3 pails of water, also a bull. The patent promised the fullest illusion of a sea or a river bath, whilst promising absolutely no water will splash on the floor. Yeah, good joke. No way that's gonna happen. And it didn't happen because that's way too good to work out. Imagine having this now growing up. Are you kidding me? My mom would be yelling at me to clean up the floor immediately. I already made enough splashes with just a stationary bathtub. I don't want a rocking bathtub. I'm trying to rinse my hair. I'm like, this sucks. Shit everywhere. It's so stupid. Just doing this is so stupid. Looking at lights. Finally, number 1, beauty patches. Oh, we need to bring back beauty patches ASAP. Imagine me right now doing this list with an 800s beauty patch. You'd hit that thumbs up immediately. You'd be like, this Victorian man is straight out of time. These patches came in all shapes and sizes. Now, even in this portrait from 1755, quite a ways ago, Joshua Reynolds painted Charles, the 9th Lord Cathcart, rocking a large beauty patch. These beauty patches go way back. Also, look at him. That's a lord right there with that. He's confident. Got one of those, he's great. Beauty patches in the 1800s, they were small, tiny circles, sometimes even hearts or stars, that's pretty fun, you go. Now the reason for these patches, and sometimes having more than one, is because they were commonly used to cover up smallpox scars. Yeah, we found out your secret, you Victorian era gentlemen. They were made out of silk velvet and they were applied with glue, so if you pick a spot, you better be confident. The patches were dark black and they were also meant to make your pale skin pop, which again, imagine if I had one right now, you'd be blind. I'm so pale as is already. If I put one of those patches on, I wouldn't be able to see the screen. You turn that brightness down real quick. The position of these patches could also determine your political allegiance. Historian Joseph Addison took note of these positions when observing 2 political parties from back in the 1800s. One party had beauty patches on the right side of their face, while the other side had the opposite. Today we have Twitter. Yeah, usually you can tell someone's political allegiance by just taking a glimpse of that. You're like, oh dear, no, we don't want to talk to that guy. He's a right patch kind of guy. Number 10, ancient telescope. The Nimrod lens. It's a 3,000-year-old rock crystal lens discovered in modern day Iraq in the mid 1800s. Now, it was discovered quite recently, but back then, this thing was like ancient technology. Today we have the James Webb Space Telescope. 3,000 years ago, they were more advanced than we think. The lens is believed to have been made by a Syrian craftsman sometime around 750 BC. It's the oldest known example right now of a magnifying lens, which is sounds kind of nerdy, but that's cool. That's kind of one of those facts that makes me go, oh, interesting, I like that. Up until then, everybody was just squinting a lot, really. We didn't have anything to zoom in on. The lens is quite small in size. It's no James Webb, that's for sure. It's around 3 centimeters in diameter and a focal length of 12 centimeters. So again, not James Webb, but it was something, right? It was anything. The exact purpose of the Nimrod lens is still up for debate. That's still unknown, but it's thought to have been used for decorative or ceremonial purposes, or possibly, hopefully, magnifying things to study small objects, because that's science right there, it's technology. The Nimrod lens is the first example of ancient optical technology. That's cool, imagine building that, that's crazy. Number 9, the iron pillar. Remember when monoliths started to appear all around the world? We were all talking about it for like a month and then we just stopped. What happened with that? That's concerning. This next one rings a similar bell. The Iron Pillar of Delhi. It's a 7.3 meter tall iron column and it's located in the Qutb complex in Delhi, India. Now it went up sometime during the Gupta period, so sometime around the 3rd and 4th century AD, and it's been standing for over 1600 years without rusting or corroding at all, which is impressive. That and like the Egyptian pyramids, we have no idea how this happened. The column is notable for its high quality iron compositions and advanced forging techniques used to create it. We still can't figure out just how that was done, considering how long ago it was made. The iron pillar is also covered in several inscriptions in the Sanskrit language, which is pretty exciting, providing valuable ancient history about the Gupta Empire, and also, again, in remarkable condition, which is super rare. The pillar attracts visitors from all over the world. Want to go see a pillar? I kind of want to go see a pillar now. That'd be a crazy trip. Number 8, the Anticather Mechanism. Computers today, we can fit them in our pockets, but ancient Greek analog computers, apparently you can also fit those in your pockets. Who knew? The Anticather Mechanism was used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses for calendrical and astrological purposes. That sounds scientific, wow. It was discovered in 1901 in the Anticather shipwreck, hence its name, and it's estimated to have been built around 150 and 100 BC. Now, the mechanism consists of at least 30 bronze gears, and it was operated by turning a crank. This is, again, like ancient technology. This is amazing. It's rusty and full of barnacles now, but back then in its prime, this mechanism would accurately display the positions of the sun, the moon, and planets on specific dates, as well as predict solar and lunar eclipses. Some guy in the back's like, spoilers, it's tomorrow. Told you. The mechanism is considered a remarkable technological achievement for its time and provides valuable insights into the history of ancient Greek astronomy and technology, all in one rusty box right there. Think of what we haven't found yet, you know what I mean? I'm nervous. I'm so nervous. Humans are quite advanced. Number 7, ancient seismoscope. Zhanghang seismoscope is an ancient Chinese instrument that was used to detect and measure earthquakes, and it looked pretty badass. I'm not gonna lie, this thing looks pretty cool. It was invented by renowned scientist, mathematician, and astronomer Zhanghang. It was made during the Han Dynasty around 132 CE. The seismoscope consisted of a bronze vessel that rested on the back of a bronze dragon, with 8 open-mouthed toads positioned beneath it. Yeah, it's scientific, but it's also a beautiful instrument, right? Like I said, it's badass. So when an earthquake would happen, a mechanism inside the vessel would trigger the release of the ball from one of the toads' mouths, indicating the direction of the earthquake. You'd be like, "Wah," that way. And everyone would be like, okay, cool. Let's go this way then. Today it's a little different. Today it's fun. It's just graphs and charts. Looks like some avatar technology, whatever. No toads puking up any balls in any direction, so ergo boring. Number 6, the Baghdad Battery, also known as the Parthian Battery. This is an ancient device that would go back to 248 BC. Why am I doing this? Am I Italian? Am I Steve Jobs? I'm walking around like, yes, I invented this. Look at my loose wrist here. Why do I gotta keep these down? Keep these at bay here. The battery consists of a clay jar, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod, all of which were found together in what is now modern day Iraq. It's believed that the device was used to generate an electric current by filling the jar with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine. I sound like Bill Nye the Science Guy right now, but then they would insert copper and iron components after, and then they would make electricity. They would make, I don't know, here, Tony Stark would make this. I don't know, it's crazy. The purpose of the Baghdad Battery is still unknown, which is fascinating. I won't be able to sleep at night now, but it's thought to have been used for electroplating or medicine or as a religious artifact. And today we're like, well, we have no idea. This is the stuff that I love. Old, ancient, like this sounds like something from Breath of the Wild that I would find. Number 5, Burke and Hare. This is a little different, but you deserve to know. Medical schools were offering a handsome fee for deceased bodies. Yeah, so if you have any of those, bring them on out. That's great. We're gonna study those because it's the 1800s. So now an unhealthy amount of Victorians came up with a new solution to make some money: robbing graves. Yeah, it got so out of hand that family members were actually guarding the graves of the recently deceased. Yeah, like their usher at a concert. They're like, we gotta make sure no one gets in here. But nobody goes down in history like William Burke and William Hare. I'm gonna call this an invention, an idea, something. This is dark history. This is the darkest of all. See, they wouldn't wait until the body was done living, you know what I mean? They would actually take people's lives and then rush the whole process. They took 16 victims in total between 1827 and 1828. It took 16 victims for people to start catching on to this horrible pattern. Are you kidding me? After 3, I'd be like, hold on. The pair would lure victims to their house, they would fill them with alcohol, and then they would suffocate them. It was horrible. They had a sick system because the body needed to be in the best condition possible in order to receive the best payout from the Edinburgh University Medical School. Yeah, you can't, hurt your product and then sell it, if you know what I mean. That's horrible. But yeah, it's what they were doing. That's why they suffocated them. The Anatomy Act of 1832 put an end to this horrific idea, so yeah. That's a dark patent. We don't like that idea. Not all these are fun, cool bathtubs. Some of them are horrendous. Number 4, bird hats. Hey, there we go. Back to some fun Victorian stuff. Look, I don't have to say much about this next one here. I love a good hat. I've tried a few out here on the channel. I've worn a frontwards cap, tried the backwards. I love a beanie. big winter guy, wear the beanie a lot. But I've never worn a bird, like a dead bird, on my head. That's something I'm not gonna do in the future. Spoilers, I'm probably not gonna go that route. Taxidermy was a hot topic back in the 1800s. Folks would rock the beaver bowler hat, and it was considered fashion. And to be fair, who am I to judge, right? It was a dangerous trend long term. Conservationists were saying that around 67,000 species of birds were all at risk of extinction due to this fad. So yeah, fidget spinners are a little nicer now than putting a dead seagull on your head and being like, hey, Merry Christmas. Number 3, holiday cards. Speaking of, today these holiday Hallmark cards, they go too hard, right? Like a little bit too much. Give me a blank space, I'll write some stuff, and we're good. Don't give me this haiku. What? So specific. They have a card for everything. Birthdays, weddings, your stepdad's uncle's name's day, whatever. They have everything covered, and it's great. Back in the 1800s, these holiday cards, they were brand new. This was a brand new idea. Nobody knew what to write or say or even draw. So they'd end up giving these artistic, sentimental scenes. It's literally a frog in a top hat riding a bike. It's like a carrot with a face. Haunting image really to receive on Christmas, but it's the thought that counts, right? So you'd see it and go, thank you so much. I'm gonna put this away forever. And number 2, servant stairs. Yeah, believe it or not, stairs were a common danger in the 1800s. I'm somebody who falls upstairs constantly. I fall upstairs, yeah. I have these big boots. Can't even walk in them. It's like Iron Giant over here. Houses were thrown up back then comedically fast. There wasn't a Mike Holmes on home situation. There wasn't even a building inspector that made sure, hey, things are safe. Servant staircases were also even smaller and they had less care. They were out of sight, built into narrow walls, often missing steps and cutting corners. That plus a tray of hot soup, it was next to impossible to move around without something horrible happening. And there were a lot of fatalities in these small staircases. Even today, around 12,000 people die falling downstairs a year. So hit that thumbs up and watch your step. Number 1, toilet troubles. Now the 1800s, it was a little dirty, a little nasty. You got water rocking around, splashing everywhere. You got mold growing out of your floors now. It was unsanitary to say the least. But it was also dangerous in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect. One of the greatest 1800s inventions was the bathroom. Yeah, just gonna go take a number 2. What a brand new idea. But it took a few tries to figure out the whole, methane gas situation. Yeah, spontaneous combustion of the bathroom was weirdly common back in the 1800s. Flammable gases like methane and hydrogen sulfide, well, they would build up over time with human waste. And human waste would build up in the sewers and eventually back up into your homes. Next thing you know, you're lighting a candle and your bathroom's blown to smithereens. It's gone. And it smells terrible. Couldn't imagine a worse way to go, really. Do you want to see some strange inventions from the 1900s, from the 2000s? You want to go back in time? Tell me what you want to see down below. I'll take a peek and then, I'll do some of them. I won't do all of them. Some are kind of weird. You guys give some weird suggestions sometimes, but, I've been your host, Taylor McWaters. Thanks for watching. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe, all that good stuff. Comment down below whatever you want to see in the near future, and then I'll appear with my Tims and I'll talk about it for way too long. Starting our list off at number 10, VR. Okay, I recently got an Oculus and I felt sick a lot. I was so dizzy right off the bat. The game's super hot where you have to throw items at bad guys. I actually got anxious. My palms were sweaty, my heart was racing. Olivia straight up cried when she tried it. It was a wild ride. This is pretty powerful technology. Black Mirror, of course, has toyed with how VR could go wrong, but The Simpsons also predicted its dangers all the way back in 2016. The episode titled Friends and Family has the town of Springfield excited over this new VR tech that's finally arrived. They're so into it that eventually people are walking in the streets while wearing these headsets. They're bumping into walls, they're smacking their heads, they're ignoring real life obligations. Cut to now with Facebook going the virtual route recently with the introduction of the metaverse. I believe The Simpsons actually undermined the dangers for this one. Yeah, you thought pop-ups and sketchy links were bad for your family on Facebook? I don't know, soon we're gonna be walking into virtual pop-ups. That's gonna be pretty alarming. $3 billion worth of VR was sold during the pandemic alone. Connecting during times like such can be vital, but how far is too far? Which room am I in? I'm in the laundry room sword fighting someone. I'm like, what am I doing right now? Number 9. Drones. Sure, drones can deliver packages now in 13 minutes flat, and sure, they can fly through bowling lanes in cinematic fashion, but could drones be so advanced that we're actually mistaking them for alien aircraft? Possibly. We don't know how advanced these things are. We have no idea. Not even the military. Back in the early 60s, the CIA had this secret program called Project Aqualine, where they used these small drones with a low radar cross-section, a little camera, all that spy stuff, and it was disguised as a bird, believe it or not. The first prototype was a bit obvious. It weighed over 100 pounds. It was this massive eagle-looking thing, but the only way to catch the drone was to fly it into a net, which broke something almost every single flight. Cut to 2022, it looks a little bit differently. Now there's like a bird conspiracy. People don't even believe birds are real, and there's for sure a drone pigeon out there somewhere. Number 8, 3D printing. This is something that did not exist when I was younger at all, in any way, shape, or form. All we had were those spider markers that like connect the dots that are like kind of sticky. That was it. That's the closest we had to 3D printing. Now people are printing swords in their basement. I don't know. Connor on our gaming channel, he printed a Pokeball and it looks awesome. It's a real size Pokeball. Now he has one of those because he printed it. It's becoming increasingly popular as they're becoming more accessible. Unlike the traditional printer, 3D printers are able to print and create these three-dimensional objects on the spot. It's fascinating how fast it works. This technology is continuing to advance, and some printers now have capabilities of printing out food and even organs. So that's great, but again, where is this all going? How far are we gonna go? Sounds like it's a kind of a bad idea. It feels good, but so does everybody in the first 20 minutes of a Black Mirror episode. Know what I mean? Like, oh, this technology is fascinating. Then they're like stuck in some virtual matrix for 40 years. Number 7, smart TVs. Survivor season 42, episode 5. That's it. That's how easy it is right now. That's where we're at with technology. Remember TV guides? That's gone. Ask your parents about TV guides. Watch the trauma return in their eyes when you ask them that one. I didn't know this was something that people were worried about until I looked into it. I love my smart TV. It's got all the apps. I can speak into the microphone instead of using the terrible primed search function. I don't need cable as well. It solves so many problems and the picture is great, but not everybody feels so on board with these smart TVs. Apparently smart TVs are so smart now that they're also keeping tabs on users' viewing habits, which viewers are worried will somehow allow criminals to hack in and then steal their personal information, which more than fair. This is a new technology. I have no idea how to do it. My dad has no idea how to use smart TVs. Oh my god, that's a nightmare all the time. There might be something that I'm missing, but do I want to find out? No, I don't know. Imagine someone hacking your TV in the middle of the night. Anonymous just appears. That'd be so haunting. I would not want to get out of bed. Number 6, self-driving cars. If you own a Tesla, first of all, nice. Bravo, must be nice, that's great. But comment down below how often you actually use the self-driving feature. I imagine that it's terrifying. I don't know if I could ever use that. Just click it and just, okay, hope it works. I watched this body cam footage the other day online of someone being pulled over in a self-driving car because they were asleep at the wheel. They were asleep, but they were driving, well, the car was driving, but they were having a nap. They were on their way to work asleep. You know what I mean? This is where the line gets kind of hazy. Do we want this technology to go further? I don't know. I kind of want people awake on the road. Call me old school. I mean, there are plenty of reasons why this feature makes sense, why it could be exceptionally helpful, and why, you know, there are people who are clearly on board with the idea, but there are also some things that are rightfully a major cause for concern. One of the most debated and truly one of the biggest questions surrounding this is an ethical one, like, will a self-driving car prioritize its driver over other road users in any given situation? Know what I mean? Something happens, who's it gonna prioritize? Someone you're about to hit, it's gonna prioritize you. How do we make those real life decisions? We don't. Well, we do, but computers, they don't.
Another kid-aimed item was Freezy Freakies, which sounds way more inappropriate than it actually is. These are actually the item on the list that if it were to come out again, exactly as it had been in the 80s, it would still sell nowadays. Kids who grew up in the Northeast were pretty invested in this fad that might have gone unnoticed in warmer areas. It's a thick winter glove that when the temperature dipped below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, an image would suddenly appear on the material on the top of your hand. 30+ designs were released, the most popular being a robot, a unicorn, rocket ships, ballerinas, rainbows, snowflakes, and various sports themes. Though the I love snow with a heart were the most popular amongst all ages. The secret to the $13 Freakies was thermochromic ink, a temperature-sensitive dye that's being used in mood rings and heat-sensitive food labels and can appear translucent until it's exposed to warmer temperatures. At the height of Freezy mania, the manufacturer was moving 300,000 pairs of gloves per year. And while Freezy Freakies lasted well over a decade, by the 1990s things had cooled. Color-changing ink for coffee mugs or beer cans was more common, wearing down the novelty, and knockoffs had also grabbed licensed cartoon characters, which the Freezies were never interested in pursuing. Regardless, they're still available for purchase today. Taking it from the back 40s to the small screen, it's a duck hunt. Quite literally. Like said, there was a lot of video games coming out in the 80s, but Duck Hunt was unique. This game is what popularized light gun video games. Games where you can use a real prop to interact with the screen. At the time of its release in '84, Duck Hunt was pretty much the first of its kind. The game was released for and by Nintendo, first as an arcade game, but then a launch game for the NES system in North America in '85. You would use the CRT television for my youngins, that's the big curved one that takes up like 4 cubic feet and has a green haze over the screen your parents could use to suss out if you're lying about watching TV before they came in the room, and the NES zapper to shoot ducks appearing on said screen. They'd appear 1 or 2 at a time and you'd only have 3 missed shots before you're out. You hit the right amount of ducks, you're on to the next level. I played this not too long ago on an old CRT myself, and nothing says entertainment like being 2 feet from a screen and getting made fun of by your best friend for getting game rage at an '84 video game. Beginning with the nationwide rollout of NES in 1986, Duck Hunt was one of several titles Nintendo included in a pack-in game with some of its releases. It remains the most sold out shooting game in the world. One fun tidbit I'll leave you with is the legacy of the Duck Hunt dog. It's only known by this name and would accompany players in certain game modes, notorious for laughing at you whenever you miss. The dog went on to cameo in another NES game, Bill Barker's Trick Shooting, but he also cameos in 2006 Wii Play and in 2011 Wii Play Motion. In 2014 Super Smash Bros., the dog and one of the ducks appear collectively as playable characters, and the Duck Hunt team and stage reappear in the 2019 Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. In 2015 film Pixels, it's the dog's best appearance, a cameo where it's given a trophy by the aliens and adopted by an old woman. The most memorable name on the list has to be Blockbuster. I can smell old carpets riddled with soda and mildew now. Nothing says luxury like wandering here on a Friday night to rent a copy of the newly released River's Edge and crush on a young Keanu Reeves with your bestie. In 1985, the first Blockbuster opened in Dallas, Texas. Yeehaw! At the time, most video rental stores were private ownership and offered a limited selection of titles. Seeing as Blockbuster had some 8,000 tapes displayed and readily available and a computerized checkout process, well, the first store was an unsurprising success and they expanded rapidly. They eventually became the largest providers of in-home movie entertainment and expanded to video and board game rentals as well. By 1985, Blockbuster was America's leading video chain with some 400 stores. By the early 1990s, Blockbuster launched its 1,000th store and expanded into the overseas market. While in the 80s they reigned, the 90s they fall. In the mid-1990s, the DVD made its debut, and with it came Netflix, the online DVD rental company, and Amazon video stores. Pay-per-view was an additional stab to Blockbuster's gut. The additional competition of being able to watch instantly without leaving home was just way too much. In 2004, Blockbuster tried to keep up with the online DVD rental service, but it just couldn't compete with Netflix's. On September 23rd of 2010, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. By 2014, the last of the company-owned stores had closed. And that, kids, is how streaming killed the video star. No more monkeys jumping on the bed, especially when mom installs the waterbed. Oh yeah, these little baddies dominated the sleeping world for quite a while. And sure, they weren't invented in the 80s, rather the late 60s, but these beds were all the wave in the 80s. Get it? Seriously though, the 80s were the height of waterbed fame. It was as if they hadn't existed prior. After experimenting with chairs filled with cornstarch and even jello, Charlie Hall, a design student at San Francisco State University, hit upon the idea of a mattress full of water. Their advent suited the swinging 60s lustrous mindset. One company claimed that 2 things are better on a waterbed, and one of them is sleep. And Charlie Hall did sell waterbeds to Hugh Hefner to cover in Tasmanian possum hair after all. By 1971, Time magazine reported that in Manhattan, the waterbed display at Bloomingdale's department store for a while was the popular singles meeting place. But we're talking 80s, when the waterbed had successfully made the leap from lonely, luxurious bachelors to the suburban bedroom. At the peak of the waterbed craze in 1987, more than 1 out of 5 mattresses purchased in the US were waterbeds, meaning that they were more mainstream than a regular mattress. So why did mainstream vanish the way it did? Couple reasons. That sexual association, great marketing during the 1970s and early 1980s, became albatrossed by the 1990s. It also had technological shortcomings. They had very heavy wooden frames, required a hose to fill and empty. Moving them was disastrous, and I mean algae or leaks are a concern. Even nowadays, mattress retailers have expressed a client can lay on a mattress and love it, but learning it's a waterbed makes it an immediate no never mind. Mainly the reason's simple. Waterbeds beds emerged during a time where the culture embraced anything different, especially a product that embodied sexual liberation or creative freedom. We aren't the same anymore. Before Pokemon, Garbage Pail Kids were what got you sent home from school for not paying attention. Man, did parents and teachers hate them, but that is part of what made kids love them more. Everything about these cards was about irony and puns, from the name to the art to the literal mocking origins. Garbage Pail Kids came out in 1985 as trading cards depicting a character having some comical abnormality, deformity, or terrible injury or disease, all with a humorous wordplay character name such as Atom Bomb or Blasted Billy. Many of the cards' backs feature puzzle pieces that form a giant mural, while others vary depending on various series, from humorous licenses and awards to comic strips. The cards were actually made to parody the Cabbage Patch Kids doll franchise that was booming at the time as a boys' product alternative. And it worked! Garbage Pail Kids quickly became the coolest thing around, with over 800 million cards making in the hands of children everywhere. The cards even inspired a live-action movie and an animated TV show, both made in 1987. The movie was so bad it grossed out critics and earned several Razzie Awards, which is a satirical awards show for cinematic failures. Cabbage Patch Kids got the last laugh, however, after suing the producers of Garbage Pail Kids settled outside of court to remove the resemblance between the characters and to change the logo design. Production of the cards themselves continued, but by 1988 the sales had dwindled and a planned Series 16 was just never produced. These cards were banned, traded, and now collected. Some of these vintages are worth fortunes nowadays.
Number 10. The Bullet Mousetrap. You might have heard me say that and said, what? Which is exactly what I said when I saw a mousetrap that's main killing potential was to fire a lead slug Minuteman style at a small rodent. It is no exaggeration to say that the difference between this mousetrap and a musket is that a musket weighs a little bit more. The mousetrap was loaded just like a traditional musket of the time, with black powder, a lead ball, and even a percussion cap. In all honesty, I'm not sure how you go about defending this mousetrap. Textbook definition of overkill. Also, you know, there's a loaded firearm in the house with a hair trigger that a small rodent could set off by gently grazing it. I like to imagine a fun family game of, do I no longer have a sister, or was that just a mouse, after hearing a small musket fire inside the home. I also had to mention that while the immediate danger of a .32 caliber lead ball finding a new home in your stomach is frightening enough, black powder being black powder is very volatile and produces a lot of energy. Fire hazard. Smokey the fire safety dog does not approve. Number 9. Tea for men. Winding the clock back to the 1800s, you'll find pictures of distinguished ladies and gentlemen. And these distinguished gentlemen have the fullest and thickest mustaches ever grown by man. Much care is needed to maintain such a manly image. So when an established gentleman goes for his morning tea, it would be rather unfortunate to get his mustache wet and ruin his dashing good looks. An invention of the 1800s beckons to solve this issue with the mustache cup. Mustache cups were invented so the chivalrous men of the day didn't ruin their grooming rituals with a cup of Earl Grey tea. The cups had a small porcelain mouthpiece with a smaller hole for drinking, while the main piece would protect the stash. It may sound ridiculous, but it almost looks like a modern travel mug. So maybe they were onto something. Number 8. Nightmare Story. I don't know about you guys, but no matter how you present them, dolls are just creepy. Have you ever noticed that when someone has a creepy doll, it's never just one? There's always a bunch of them for some reason. I don't know, I wouldn't want the room to feel safe or welcoming after all. One man in 1871 said, I know, let's make them even creepier by having them move themselves. The creeping doll, as it was called, was a doll-like automaton that had clock-like gears to simulate real human movement, with the addition of hidden wheels underneath to aid in the doll moving across the floor. Because, you know, the last thing I need is this doll creeping into my bed at night. Whew. Number 7. Gee, this cane is heavy. As people began to settle down after imperial monarchies went the way of the dodo bird, it was a good idea in everyone's best interest to limit people carrying weapons. If people didn't have swords, it could make another revolution a little less bloody. But what's that I hear from upper class wealthy people who don't want to listen to the rules that they make? Well, how about concealed and hidden swords? Yep, that's right. Cane swords were a popular fashion accessory in the 19th century. As carrying swords fell out of fashion, royal men needed to take swords with them for self-defense, or so they thought. Even women were concealing these hidden bladed inventions in parasols. However, it was socially unacceptable for a woman to have such possessions, let alone have the ability to know such training. As time went on, the hidden compartments that held blades were replaced with my personal favorite item, a flask. Number 6. Look at all these cool chickens. Let's face it, we all went through our awkward phases in life. And if you didn't live through the early 2000s as a youth, then bands like Linkin Park and My Chemical Romance just don't hit as hard. So when trying to find the weirdest inventions of the 1800s, I felt like closing my bedroom door and playing Green Day as I dye my hair because I'm super serious about how I feel. Why do I feel this teenage angst, you ask? Well, that's because there's rose-tinted glasses for chickens. Yeah, and they're cooler than me. Oh, yeah, little tiny eyeglasses for chickens, but they actually have a good use. They were designed to prevent pecking and cannibalizing other chickens. Ooh. The theory goes that if a chicken was wearing rose-tinted glasses, he couldn't distinguish between blood and what wasn't. That way they wouldn't attack each other. Yet another heartwarming comfort from the 1800s.
Number 5 is the first syringe. Hello to our pre-Columbian friends again, you guys were killing it in the invention game. Indigenous of South America were known to have fashioned a syringe using animal remains. Like with the baby bottle, a sac-like organ was used to hold the liquid. In this case, the choice was smaller animal bladders. Next, a hollowed bird bone with a sharpened tip was attached and used as a needle. How on earth indigenous peoples got called primitive is beyond me. The ability to even recognize medicines, make them injectable, and figure out the knowledge of the body in prehistoric times enough to know what would happen should it be injected and where, frankly it's remarkable. In fact, the syringe didn't show up in European medicine until the 1850s, when Scottish physician Alexander Wood thought maybe using needles to inject more could relieve pain. Right. And what medicine were the indigenous colonies using in these syringes? Number 4 is anesthetic medicines, topicals, oh my. Traditional medicine is part of cultural legacy of indigenous peoples and their purpose for more than 2,500 plant species. Like the Takana and the Leko, who use quinine, cat's claw, and avanta, all plants recognized by modern pharmaceutical industries. First Nations used olefin, hydrocarbons, and methane to make petroleum jelly and used it to hydrate and protect animal and human skin. The Amazonian and Andean indigenous people of South America pioneered the use of a variety of medicinal plants to manage ailments. An example of this is ginger. We currently use it to flavor dishes, but indigenous healers prepared it as a medicinal drink to relieve pain or reduce inflammation. Another remedy for pain and inflammation was black willow bark. Once it gets into the body, salsine produces salicylic acid, the active ingredient in modern aspirin tablets. That's right, they produced aspirin. And in modern day Virginia, Jimson weed was ground and used as a plaster on external injuries and bruises. It could be injected or ingested as an anesthetic while broken bones were set. There are even treatments for hemorrhoids, suppositories made from dogwood trees, a material still used medicinally today. Oral contraceptives were invented when the Shoshone and Potawatomi used herbs like stone seed and dogbane to prevent pregnancy. I swear I could make an entire video about the medicines and remedies invented by indigenous people, many of which were also the first ways to brush teeth, cleanse breath, heck, even the first sunscreen was invented through indigenous healing practices. It's truly unreal what was accomplished, and I personally recommend sweet fern tea for your next stomach bug or hangover. Rubber is number 3, and no, not the contraceptive. Many don't know that natural latex is derived from plants and trees. Many also don't know that the Aztecs, Olmec, and Maya of the Mesoamerica are known to have made rubber using this natural latex. It would be harvested from rubber trees and mixed with the juice of morning glory vines. These two plants ironically would grow very close to each other, so it's believed that's how ancient civilizations stumbled across the vine's fluid containing a chemical that solidified latex so it wouldn't be brittle anymore. Depending on your latex to vine juice ratio, your rubber could differ. Some came out more bouncy, like a rubber ball used in the famous Mesoamerican ball games. Other combinations created durable leather, which was likely used for homes as well as for sandals, which were described by Spanish conquistadors that have never been found by archaeologists. When you look into Aztec civilization, it's not a surprise that they were making advanced rubber. They truly had the spirit of scientific inquiry. Number 2 is I can't hear you. Thankfully, that was no concern to the indigenous peoples, as when speakers of one language met those of another in trade, council, travels, or conflicts, they communicated in the then universal language of hand talk. It's dated past 30 years old and observed among Florida tribes by the 16th century Spanish colonizers. This is considered one of the oldest languages in North America, without a word ever being spoken. Though universal in North America, hand talk was more prominent amongst the nomadic Plains nations, earning the modern-day title of Plains Indian Sign Language, or PISL. So, if sign language was around for this long, why didn't you know, and why isn't it a worldwide language like English is? 2 reasons. 1. By the late 1800s, tens of thousands of indigenous people still used hand talk, but that changed when the federal government and Catholic Church initiated the erasure of indigenous people and culture. This destroyed the communities and history for decades to come. And 2. In the 1870s 1870s and 1880s, fierce opponents of sign language called oralists were led by the apparent Canadian legend Alexander Graham Bell on an ableist mission to ban sign language and force hearing impaired people to communicate by lip reading or learning to speak, because it was apparently more convenient for everyone else. He rightfully failed, as ASL and Indigenous hand talk are still recognized and used today. He did introduce some new techniques some hearing impaired people just prefer more. McKay Cody is the first deaf researcher to specialize in North American hand talk, and today helps work with Indigenous colonies and tribes to help preserve the original sign language. She's also pushing for PISL to be rightfully incorporated into mainstream education of ASL. At number 1 in the countdown, no, it wasn't the Greeks and it wasn't the Romans. How Indigenous democracy made the colonial world. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy of what is now upstate New York developed a democracy made up of 6 nations, with each tribe taking care of its own governance. Consisting of 117 rules recorded on strings of wampum beads, the Great Law of Peace, an oral constitution, was designed to help the Haudenosaunee live in harmony. Dating to as early as perhaps 1142, this charter is based on community unity, liberty, and equity. It even provides for the separation of powers and outlines impeachment procedures. Should any major issue arise in a tribe that was of interest to all tribes, the 6 would convene in a middle point and to make any decisions together. Beside vesting the community with the power to choose its leaders, a right which at the time may have been unique in the world, it was even described that the ideal character of those leaders was a servant to their people rather than an overlord. You were to lead with empathy, honesty, bravery. The United States of America traces its political roots to the Declaration of Independence in 1776, but by then democracy was old news in the so-called New World. During the American Revolution, thousands of Indigenous already lived under a system of governance. So, as the Founding Fathers began crafting a more perfect union from scratch, they followed the example of the 6 nations. This is documented in letters written by George Bush, but also acknowledged hundreds of years later in 1988 by American Congress, who said the confederation of the original 13 colonies into one republic was influenced by the political systems developed by the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, as were many of the democratic principles which were incorporated into the Constitution itself, a constitution that the Indigenous peoples would be left out of. Thank you so much for tuning in and sticking around. I hope you learned something new today. Always remember to thank the land you're on and take time to appreciate what you have.
Number 10. The National Razor. What's a revolution without a little blood being spilt? Wouldn't really be a revolution, would it? France was having a hard time in the 1700s, so they needed a brand new way to get rid of pesky monarchs and anyone who isn't warming up to the revolutionary ideals. And what better way to keep people warm by cleaving their heads from their body? A man named Joseph Ignaz Guillotine suggested that there was a better method for unaliving those who needed to be unalived. A common misconception is that he invented the guillotine, but rather suggested its implementation, where his name would become synonymous with such a terrible device. Basically, you got a wood frame with a hole for your noggin and a large angled blade. Blade drops down from frame and removes the head of state from the governing body, which isn't just a clever joke, as that's what happened to the last king and queen of France. By the time of its invention and the end of its use all the way up into the 1970s, yes, that's right, it was used up until the 70s, thousands of people met their doom to the National Razor. Number 9. Party favors in the sky. When you think of air travel today, you think of lots of space for you and your fellow passengers, meals that are flavorful and affordable. Air travel in 2021 is a stress-free, very organized way to travel. But in the 1700s, these luxuries of the sky were non-existent, as there was no air travel. Any international travel was done by ship, which took months at a time and was not a pleasurable experience, opposite to what was described above. 2 French brothers wanted to change this, or rather just get off the ground. The 2 French brothers, Montgolfier, developed and flew the first unmanned hot air balloon on September 19, 1783. This was shortly followed up with a manned flight by Jean-Francois Pilote de Rosier. This was a very strange invention at the time, as this was really the beginning of humans and flight. Number 8. Puckle needs his gat. Ever since black powder first made it to Europe and Europeans figured out you could make big gun that go boom, people have been trying to come up with better and faster ways to make gun go boom. In the 1700s, the biggest issue with muskets and cannons at the time was reloading, or getting multiple shots off. Loading black powder weapons isn't easy. I'd say ask a pirate, but you can't. Those kind of pirates are all gone now. So to fix the issue of the day, a man named James Puckle invented the very cleverly named Puckle gun. Basically, he just added more chambers of shot rotating around one barrel. Although his idea for the time was genius, in practice it wasn't very effective, as flintlock and black powder are really the main issue. Clumsy, lots of smoke, and does not want to work in less than fair weather conditions. Number 7. Cotton Eye Joe. Dear YouTube gods, I am sorry that history is full of not so cool things, but here at Bumblebee, I'm the queen bee, and I'm here to give the buzz to my sweet honeybees. So in the name of good morals, monetization, and not getting smited, I'm gonna talk about your least favorite S word. Back in the 1700s, America was chillin'. They just beat Britain in a war, which alone could be its own video. They were starting to build their own country, particularly in these southern colonies, using forced unpaid labor that you can't leave. Oh, and your boss can do heinous things to you because he owns you. Their economy was agricultural based and stayed that way for a long time. Tobacco being the number one crop at first, cotton was still grown but wasn't as popular due to the processing of cotton being a very labor intensive and difficult process. This was until Eli Whitney's cotton gin, invented in 1794. The cotton gin was a machine that quickly removed seeds and processed cotton, making cotton a very valuable crop since, you know, the people harvesting the cotton are YouTube's least favorite S word. It's a brutal unpaid workforce. Now that it was profitable, cotton boomed and the South became very wealthy. While not exactly the main reason, the South getting rich off Whitney's design and did somewhat create a divide between the southern states and the northern states, eventually leading to the Civil War. Also, apparently plantation owners didn't pay Eli for his machine and he went broke. Just trashy behavior all around, man, come on. Number 6. Yes, I'm a Russian submarine commander. I actually couldn't believe this one myself, but the submarine was invented in the 1700s. Having designs and plans started in the 1500s, the first real use of a submersible vessel wasn't until 1775, named the Turtle, an acorn-shaped vessel with a crew of just 1. To me, it's just hard to think that in the same century we were beginning to master flight and sea travel. I also can't stop thinking that if there was a water ride that existed, it would be pretty cool if you went underwater in like a pod, like a submarine kind of thing. Just an idea for the mouse and the corporation. Of course, it wouldn't be years until after the Turtle that the submarine would see effective use. Or have a Scottish man play a Russian submarine commander in a really good movie. Russian submarine commander.
Number 5. Radiated toys. The Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab. Nice. This toy set sure looks fun upon first glance, but when the company released this kit back in 1950, it was all but games. Gilbert, who was a successful toy maker, businessman, and even magician, always a red flag I guess, he believed that his line of work should be fun yet informative. Yeah, one of those nerds. He was nicknamed the man who saved Christmas after he convinced the US Council of National Defense not ban toy purchases during World War I around the holiday season, so that's cool. He really wanted to get this product out there and still make money during a war. What a hero. This set was around $50 too, which back in the day was a lot more than $50 now, and the price was justified as the set was actually radioactive. Sorry, what? That's right, the Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab contained a cloud chamber where you can actually see real alpha particles traveling at 12,000 miles a second. Yeah, imagine asking for a light bright and you get this. You're like, oh cool, radiation poisoning, that's awesome. I'd rather find coal. Next. Number 4. Burke and Bronze Radium Chocolate. This sounds like a bad time already. Radium chocolate? That's horrible. These delights were sold between 1931 and 1936, and it was praised for the effect that it had on consumers. See, instead of getting a tummy ache after downing some of the Burke and Bronze chocolate, you would feel rejuvenated. The chocolate was made in real radium water, guaranteed. That was the selling point, you know? Real radium water. That's, if you see this, you're either playing Fallout 4 or you've gone back in time. This is not looking good. Looking back now at the details that I just provided you, you can imagine the horror stories that slowly began to spread over these new delicious treats. It's the holidays, you know, you gotta be careful. Lindor always messes me up. That's a bad one. Lindor and radium chocolate both really upset my tummy. Number 3, mood rings. I'll admit it, these blew my mind at one point. I was 4 years old and I could not understand the science behind a mood ring. I was relying on these things every single day. The mood ring was a 70s invention famous for, of course, its changing appearance. How does he do it? Nobody knows, right? That's the magic of it. Joshua Reynolds and Maris Ambatz were the moody masterminds behind the whole fad. And in 1995, the pair sold 40 million rings in only a few months. Yeah, what colors are angry again? Because I'm very that color right now. just hearing that fact. Number 2, spring spokes. There's winter tires and then there's spring tires. Here we go. This is one of them works, one of them doesn't. Back in 1905, which didn't even know there was cars back then, automobile manufacturers tried to create spring spoke wheels to make your commute a lot smoother, right? If you live downtown Toronto, here you go. This is gonna save your day. You would hit a rock and then go boing, and then all of a sudden you would be at work. Sounds perfect. Sounds like not a hazard at all. This of course didn't last in history. We don't have these at all outside today, thankfully. Wheels were breaking under pressure. They were wobbly, which is certainly the last thing you want while you're driving to work, I assume. I don't have a car, commute kid. Spinners are sick. You want to jazz up your ride, grab some spinners, throw those on your Jeep, you're good. You see any spring wheels? Just keep moving. And finally, number 1, earthquake machine. Nikola Tesla. Of course, I have to save an invention of his for number 1. This man knew a thing or two about electricity, and legend has it he made a steam-powered machine that could actually cause small earthquakes. Yeah, sounds like a supervillain, but okay, science, I guess. Tesla's electromechanical oscillator, or earthquake machine as I call it because it's a little easier. Legend has it, it actually caused a small earthquake in 1898 in New York. Yeah, in New York too, that's like an Avengers level threat right there. Now, Nikola Tesla told this at his 79th birthday party, according to his biographer. So there's no science that support these claims, therefore, was it real? Probably not, but it's kind of fun to think about, right? The vibrations on this machine was basically a massive taser, and it caused your muscles to clench up. And, you know, ergo, things would leave your body after you'd clench, so yeah. Nikola Tesla, was he a supervillain? Comment down below. Sounds like it.
Number 10, the smell-o-vision. Oh, this is bad. We've come a long way since the dawn of filmmaking. Imagine all of your movies costing 5 cents and all in black and white with no sound. Ooh, what a time to be alive. Today, obviously, we have color, sound, virtual reality, and those moving boxes at the movies, which honestly I'm not crazy about. They shake too much. I'm not a big fan. Same with the 3D. Those glasses that we used to wear, we don't really do the 3D anymore. It was bad. Anyway, some people think that's not enough. Some people want more. Enter the smell-o-vision, created by a man named Hans Lube. I mean, that's just that just writes itself, doesn't it? The idea is that while you are watching a movie, you can smell the smells on screen. A field of grass, a car chase with burning rubber, a breakfast scene. My issue is what happens if I leave the smell-o-vision on and I fall asleep on the couch and reruns of Dirty Jobs comes on? Ooh, yucky. Or better yet, you guys have a smell-o-vision and you're watching my bloopers. Uh-oh, stinky. That wouldn't be very good, would it? Number 9, the Virtual Boy. This one's just crazy. I doubt many people would remember this, and in Nintendo's defense, they usually know what they're doing. Well, most of the time. Usually. There's so many remasters that they could do. It's a license to print money. I don't know why they don't. Come on, Nintendo, I'm waiting for it. The Virtual Boy, however, oh boy. I wouldn't expect many to have seen it since the sales were poor. The Virtual Boy was a 32-bit portable console that was basically a headset, except, you know, there's no straps to put it around your head, but a stand so you can play games on it while laying prone? Yeah, I'm not sure. My back hurts just looking at it. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. The main selling point was the graphics. It was a big topic back in the 90s. The Virtual Boy was capable of 3D, which was huge for the time. Way ahead of its time. Except it was stereographic 3D and monochrome red. Everything was just shades of red. So watching footage of the gameplay gives me a headache, as I'm sure playing it would. So I can see why laying on your living room floor playing this, well, it sucks. Number 8, the black powder mousetrap. Mice. They're everywhere, and they suck. At least the wild ones. Some people got cute pets. So we place mouse traps to get rid of them. However, sometimes we get our fingers cut, which also sucks. Oh man, it hurts really bad. Or if you're a friend of Johnny Knoxville, it hurts all over. They do a lot of weird stuff with mouse traps. Love those guys. However, one design of mousetrap I think is the worst because it could potentially end your life is the black powder mousetrap. It was essentially just like ye olde cannons of the time. Black powder, big iron ball, except just on a much tinier scale. And in the house, because, you know, having a cannon go off in the house is a great idea. Sure, let's just have that. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. Number 7, the baby cage. Living in large cities can be difficult. Toronto being the 3rd largest in North America, well, I can relate. It's crazy we're that big. Things get busy even in the suburbs here. There's a hustle and a bustle that small cities and towns just don't get. Now, back in the early 20th century, this was still the case, except there wasn't the same emphasis on park life, biking, and enjoying what fresh air actually is in the city like there is in modern cities today. We've done better since then. And there's nothing more important than fresh air for babies, so that's why in the 1920s the baby cage was invented. Basically, it was a wire cage that hangs out of your 5th floor apartment window, like that massive AC unit that hasn't worked properly since McDonald's ran out of Szechuan sauce. Obviously, I don't need to tell you why this is a bad idea, and not too long after, it was outlawed. It's just don't, that's high up, it could drop, yeah, no, bad idea, not a good idea. Number 6, this one's for the older crowd, the Ford Pinto. Remember those bad boys? I never had the pleasure of being in one or owning one myself, but I swear to God, every time my family got together, the men would sit around and talk about cars that they own. It's kind of a man thing to do, I guess, even though they all had the same conversation the last time, which is just like only a couple months ago. And one model that always comes up is the Ford Pinto. Today cars get recalled all the time, but in the age of affordable family vehicles and quality, the Ford Pinto stood out, especially because there was a chance the Pinto could burst into flames, which is arguably the worst thing a car could do. Besides not work. I'd argue not working is better than bursting into flames. A few other major issues really set back what I think is a very sleek and appealing vehicle to both mom and dad and the family.
Number 5. Transistors. The invention of the transistor in 1947, we don't talk about it enough. This was a major breakthrough in the field of electronics. The transistor is a semiconductor device that can amplify and switch electronic signals, and this of course paved the way for the development of modern electronics, including computers, televisions, radios, this thing that I'm talking to you on, all of that good stuff. The invention of the transistor was made by a team of scientists at Bell Laboratories, led by William Shockley. William Shockley, he's like, oh, trust me, I have to do this profession. The first transistor was made using germanium, and it was much smaller and much more efficient than the vacuum tubes that were used at the time. Yeah, believe it or not, this was a step in the right direction. This was the future. I'm looking up research about transistors while using a computer. What a weird era we're in right now. It was a weird time. Number 4, the Parthian Empire Battery. The Parthian Battery is an ancient artifact discovered in modern day Iraq. This battery dates back to the 1st century BCE. Yeah, year 1, uno, just 1. Happy New Year. It's been one of them. The battery itself is a clay jar containing a copper cylinder that surrounds a big iron rod. Looks quite unsafe, if I'm being honest. I don't know. If I saw that on the subway, I'd probably not get on. A little sketchy. The jar also contains an asphalt stopper and an electrolyte solution, and it's believed to have been made of vinegar or wine. So that was their power back then. Although the purpose of the battery is not entirely clear, it's speculated that it may have been used for electroplating or, check this out, or for medical purposes. Yeah, medical purposes. Imagine being brought back to life thousands of years ago, and there's a guy holding this waiting in front of you. That's jarring. You're like, did I die? Am I back? What is that? What are you holding? The Parthian Empire Battery is proof that we didn't need aliens back then to do stuff, right? Humans were more advanced than we think. Specifically, humans from ancient civilizations. They somehow figured this out. They had knowledge of electricity and electrochemistry in the year 1 AD. That's crazy. This invention challenges the commonly held belief that modern science and technology are recent developments. It's like, no, they had some shit back then for sure. Number 3, vaccines. Plagues aren't new. Random diseases that can sweep an entire country. We've seen this play out many times in history. The Black Death killed 75 to 200 million people in the 14th century. The Spanish flu in 1918, it killed 1/3 of the world's population, 50 million lives. The cholera pandemic began in 1817, and in 2010, there was another outbreak in Haiti. Couldn't get worse. Vaccines are a little important. Yeah, they go back to the 17th century when English physician Edward Jenner developed a method to protect against smallpox. Now, this was performed by injecting people with cowpox, which was a less severe disease. The practice of vaccination gradually spread throughout Europe, and by the 19th century, thankfully, vaccines were being developed for a range of diseases, including polio, measles, and tetanus. Those 3 things you really don't want at any point in your life. Vaccines have played a crucial role in preventing infectious diseases and have saved countless lives. However, there's also been a controversy surrounding their use, particularly in recent years with the rise of anti-vaccine movements. Yeah, a lot of people with Sharpies and time today. You didn't have that back in the dark ages. Bristol board wasn't a thing back then, you know? Number 2, ancient telescope. Yes, let's see some stuff. Let's see the past. The Nimrod lens. This is a 3,000-year-old rock crystal lens that was discovered, again, in modern day Iraq. It was discovered in the mid-1800s. Just an ancient relic. Just an ancient telescope, fresh out of Zelda. There we go. Today we have the James Webb Space Telescope, but 3,000 years ago, they were more advanced than we thought. The lens is believed to have been made by a Syrian craftsman sometime around 750 BC, and it's the oldest known example of a magnifying lens. Up until then, everybody was squinting a lot, kind of like how I do with the prompter sometimes. You'll see, I'm like, ooh. The lens is quite small in size. It's about 3 centimeters in diameter, not much, and its focal length was only 12 centimeters. Again, it's no James Webb, but back then, thousands of years ago, it was something. Now, the exact purpose of the Nimrod lens is still up for debate, but it's thought to have been used for decorative or ceremonial purposes, or possibly as a magnifying glass for studying small objects. The Nimrod lens is the first example of ancient optical technology. So small. He's like, ah yes, it's a moon. Number 1. The printing press. Look, I'm no fan of homework, okay? But I get it. It's important. You gotta do it. The printing press, this is a revolutionary invention, and it was invented during the medieval period, and it allowed for the mass production of books and or pamphlets. Yeah, pamphlets were huge back in medieval times. They loved folding. Invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century, the printing press could now reproduce text more quickly, and it was pretty cheap considering what came before. You had to hire a guy just to rewrite everything. That's gonna take ages. And it did. Took quite a few fortnights. The printing press had quite the impact on society. It enabled wider access to knowledge, the spread of ideas, and it contributed to the growth of literacy, which I guess I could use a little bit of today. That's great. The printing press played a key role in the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation, and it may or may not have helped lay the foundation for the modern world. And I think it's probably the most important thing. I think words and ideas being spread, that's probably the most important thing. Don't you think so? Hit that thumbs up if you agree. Top 10, boom, history. Number 10, the Fuzzy Wonder. Growing up, I had the classic red toy car. It was great. I would honk the horn, slam the door with attitude, wearing a diaper. It was the perfect invention for a youngin' like me. But back in the Victorian era, the toys or whatever, not as fun. Definitely not as fun. Fisher-Price wasn't born yet, so if you wanted to wheel around and kill time, maybe even have a few laughs, well, you had to use this. The Fuzzy Wonder. Yeah, this, let's unpack this one, shall we? This patent, I'll be honest, this patent here makes me think. It makes me wonder more than anything. Why didn't this change history? Are you kidding me? The fuzzy seat, the gears, the foot straps, the possibilities are endless with the Fuzzy Wonder. The only thing that we do know about this patent, the only hint as to who or what this was for, is written right below the product's name. It says, the Fuzzy Wonder, the champion of his species. His species? You're telling me there's more of these? Where's the Fuzzy Champion? Let's take him for a spin. He's probably got an engine. It's probably great. I go shopping riding one of these for sure. Definitely. Wheeling around, throwing stuff in. Easy. Number 9, top hat cigar holders. Yeah, this one here is so Victorian. I love it. In the Victorian era, smoking cigars was a popular pastime amongst wealthy men. If you were rich, you had to smoke cigars all day, every day, and then cough nonstop. Cigar holders, of course, were used to prevent the cigar smoke from directly entering the smoker's mouth and to keep the cigar cool and on your persons. There were various types of cigar holders during the Victorian era, ranging from simple wooden or metal tubes to more elaborate designs made of ivory, silver, or sometimes gold, fancy schmancy. Some holders were designed to be attached at the end of a walking stick, while others could be worn as a pendant on a chain, or in this case, for some reason, a top hat. Yeah, why is there smoke coming from that man's head? I wonder if he's okay. Oh, he's just bad. That's cool. My mistake, sir. Continue on with your Victorian cigar stroll. Yeah, people's heads were smoking. They would keep all of them lit on their top hat. What a weird place to hold them. Cigar holders were often personalized with the owner's initials or family crest, and they were considered a status symbol, although it looked ridiculous on a top hat. This was a way to flex your wealth, you know what I mean? There were no broke boys walking around with top hats. No way. Or cigar holders on said top hats. No way, that's insane. That's a lot of weight on a hat. I'd be doing this a lot. Number 8, the fork and knife cleaner. In theory, in the Victorian era, this one sounds great, but it also seems like way more effort than just hand washing, you know? I don't know, let's talk about it. Invented in 1850 by Thomas Parker in Kensington, the knife and fork cleaner in the 1850s, it was pretty significant. It was a big improvement in the process of cleaning cutlery, a bit, I guess. Prior to this invention, cleaning knives and forks was a time-consuming and often challenging task. Definitely harder than it is today to wash a dish. The knife and fork cleaner consisted of a handheld device with multiple bristles and brushes and gears that would all fit around the knife or the fork, and then it would spin and move around. Again, looks like a saw trap. The user would then rub the utensil back and forth through the bristles to remove any food or debris. It took a while, and like I'm saying, a little bit more effort probably. This invention was particularly used for commercial kitchens where large quantities of cutlery needed to be cleaned quickly, so restaurants, whatever. It was also popular among households, even though it didn't last too long. It's definitely worth a mention. It looks scary more than anything. I wouldn't be like, ugh, cleaning my fork, like, don't eat my arm, thank you. Number 7, Vigor's horse action saddle. All right, now we're into it. Here we go. I mentioned the Fuzzy Wonder earlier. This thing here, Vigor's horse action saddle. Yeah, action saddle. We got some action here. There we go. This saddle would sit somewhere in your home, ideally in a place where no one else could see you. That's great, that's a start. The way they marketed this thing back then, they made it sound like it was an actual health benefit riding this big vibrator, for lack of a better term. That's all it did. It just vibrated and you sat on it. That's all I'll say. It's all I'm allowed to say. On the patent, it states that Vigor's horse action saddle can promote good spirits, it quickens circulation, it stimulates the liver, and probably other places, and it even creates an appetite. Yeah, all that in a thing that shakes you up in the corner of your house. Imagine it's the Victorian era and you have to watch your drunk uncles take turns riding this thing all weekend long. This is far too intimate for the family room. This is kind of gross. Yeah, it vibrates a lot and really hard, so that's it. You can do the rest. You can think the rest of the thoughts, dirty freaks. Number 6, the toilet mask. Madame Rowley's toilet mask. Okay, where do I even begin with this one? At first, I thought that this was a mask that you had to wear while you took a shit. I mean, compared to everything else on this list, I was like, yeah, sure. People would wear the Phantom of the Opera masks every time they had to go to the washroom. Probably, who knows? They were weird back then. A toilet mask was not that. I mean, not too far from that. A toilet mask was a natural beautifier for bleaching and preserving your skin. Victorian bleach. Easy, that's fun. The patent even stated that this mask would remove complexion imperfections. Complexion imperfections, see you later. Huh, what a treat, how lucky are we? All you have to do is wear this mask 3 times a week. For how long? I don't know, doesn't say. Just feel it out, I guess. Just feel out the bleach. Turns out lead cosmetics pasted onto a mask and bleach, turns out it was not beneficial for your health at all. Who knew? Not me. Yes, let me put on my bleach mask before, well, I can't breathe or see anymore. Never mind, I'm gonna stop wearing that.
Number 5. I'm coming out of this hole, partner. We enjoy many luxuries in the 21st century. Warm houses, everyday appliances, and the freedom to shout profanities at strangers on the internet you slightly disagree with, but you give them the business anyway because it's been a bad week and you deserve it. But probably what we should all be thankful for is modern medicine. Back in the 1800s, it just wasn't where it is today. A great example of that is safety coffins. A truly grim situation. A medical doctor has declared you dead. Now you are being buried alive. Have no fear, friends, because you had enough money for a safety coffin. The coffin contained a device or means of various designs, which was to alert the living of your mistaken burial and hopeful resurrection. The very rational fear of being buried alive most likely was spun from fiction and news at the time, with the occasional case happening here and there. However, I'm of the opinion it should be a never ever kind of thing. Yeah, no thanks. Number 4. Your bad hair day has just been terminated. Oh, to live in a time of industrial revolution where machines go and go. I'm sure that all this heavy industry won't enable bad practices of corporations and usher in the destruction of our environment. Pfft, no sir! This is the age of machines, and if machines can help with one thing, it most certainly can aid in another. May I introduce you the rotary hairbrush? Why brush your own hair when an overcomplicated machine can do it for you? At the time, it kinda made sense. Machines felt like they were the way of the future. They were kind of right, but at this rate everything in the home would have intricate pulleys or a steam engine attached. Steampunk anyone? Number 3. Full of air. The Industrial Revolution changed the world, we can't deny that. That can also be said for the steam trains. But what about pneumatic power trains? Back in the 1800s, a man named Alfred Eli Beach came up with such a design. Prior testing had proven useful enough to build a larger demonstration in New York. So he built a tunnel to test his air-powered train. It only ran a short distance, but the train held 22 people and was controlled by a roots blower nicknamed the Western Tornado. That was also my nickname in high school. Sadly, the project didn't receive much support from the government at the time, and other methods for trains eventually took over. Unfortunate, because it sounds like Alfred Eli Beach was very dedicated to the project, as he put up a very large sum of money to the project. The tunnel that housed the short train line was completed in 58 days. While he did have bigger plans for his train, it kinda just became an amusement for people. It was shortly shut down thereafter. But 58 days, that's pretty quick. I'd like to see that happen in a major city now. No way it's happening. Number 2. Get on my mongoose, bro. Looking at the Motor Scout, you can see the beginnings of what could be a 4-wheeler. Personally, I think it looks like a mongoose from Halo, but Mom thinks I play too many games. Designed by F.R. Sims in the late 1890s, it was never really meant for off-road terrain, instead to support infantry on smooth roads. Sims, understanding the annoyance of trying to ride your motorized quad cycle while someone is firing at you, placed a Maxim machine gun on the quad to return fire. which is strange because usually these things require a team of soldiers to operate. He also added an iron shield for a little extra protection. It is too bad the next major conflict would have a lack of usable roads and more trenches than anything else. While it never did see combat, it was somewhat useful and would later inspire Sims to design the first armored car. Number 1. Bro, trust me. Everyone has a favorite article of clothing. For sports fans out there, it could be a lucky jersey, but back in the 1800s, there was an article of clothing no British soldier could be without: the cholera belt. What does a cholera belt do exactly? Well, it helps to prevent cholera. I've got good sources, bro, trust me. The running not so scientific theory at the time was that any abdominal issues and sickness was caused by a chilly belly. So simply make your tummy warm and voila, cholera has been prevented. British soldiers in India were often given the belts unaware of the biohazard that was an epidemic. The belts were just flannel that basically wrapped around you. It's a good thing we're not superstitious today and would never buy into such ridiculousness. Hey man, did my order of healing crystals come in? I'm getting some bad voodoo vibes at home lately, man. I totally need to cleanse that space, bro.
Kicking off our list at number 10, Seaside at Home. Grab your goggles, friends, we're splashing around right off the hop. Seaside at Home, it sounds fun already. The Niagara Wave Rockin' Bath. Yeah, sounds exciting. Are you tired of regular bathtubs that are stationary and or relaxing? Well, the Niagara Wave Rockin' Bath washes all of that away. The bathtub purposely designed to rock. Yeah, it keeps your blood in active circulation, apparently, medical experts say, and it only requires 3 pails of water. The patent also promises the fullest illusion of a sea or river bath, whilst promising absolutely no water will splash onto the floor. Yeah. Good joke. No way. There's absolutely no way. Imagine having this growing up. My mom would be yelling at me to clean up the floor every minute. No way. I'd get in and then immediately get back out. This thing sucks. Also, it's kind of scary. I don't want to rock around underwater. Number 9, Vigor's Saddle. The road to better health starts here. Horseback riding was the thing back in the 1800s, of course, but how does one practice in the comfort of your own home? Before Guitar Hero, what did we do at our friend's house, right? Vigor's horse action saddle. That's what we did. This saddle would sit somewhere in your home and take up half the space. Ideally a place where nobody else could see. It was always fun. And the way they marketed this thing, they made it seem like an actual health benefit, when really it's just like something that does this to you. On the advertisement it says it promotes good spirits, it quickens circulation, they love that circulation fact, it stimulates the liver, and even creates an appetite. Ooh, I'm hungry already watching this. Watching somebody play VR, like in the corner of the room, that's pretty funny, that's a weird thing to see. Imagine your roommate hopping on one of these. A little intimate, I'd say. Little rather intimate. Number 8, the multi-purpose cane. Again, enough with plain old canes. We're sick of them, all right? You know, the ones that help you walk around? Nah, that's old news. We're doing some new stuff in the 1800s. The multi-purpose cane has everything you need for your casual 1800s day, all in the palm of your hand. Catering to all gentlemanly pastimes, okay? Like for example, on the ad, it says, catching butterflies, sheltering from the rain, playing the flute. Okay, sure. And even a horse measuring tape, all in this cane. Nice, thank God this exists. I do all those things every single day, and now I can cut my time in half. Play the flute, measure a horse, and then Mary Poppins away. Easy. Number 7, fence cycle. Are you tired of walking along the fence all day long? If you're someone who does that, for sure. Yeah, perhaps you live on an 1800s farm and for some reason you have a really long fence with 0 twists and or turns and no nails sticking out, sturdy the entire time and completely flat. The perfectly long fence. Well, this holiday season, show your loved ones how much you respect their patellas and get them the fence cycle. Save them all that fence walking time. Hop on this weird saw contraption. There you go. Good luck. The upside down bicycle that could only work on flat fences. Nice. This patent here came from none other than Vincent van Gogh. Weird, right? Imagine this in the Toronto Van Gogh Experience exhibit. Get on these things and start wheeling around the city. You're like, this is wildly dangerous. Number 6, beauty patches. We need to bring back beauty patches immediately. Imagine Timothée Chalamet with an 1800s beauty patch on one side in Dune 2. Game over. Here's the Oscar. Take it. These patches came in all shapes and sizes, and even in this portrait from 1755, Joshua Reynolds painted Charles, the 9th Lord Cathcart, rocking a large beauty patch. Yeah, that's a pretty big one too. The guy looks like Nelly. What a look. That's confidence right there. That's a lord right there. Fabrics used in the 1800s were commonly small, tiny circles, sometimes even hearts or stars. Yeah, how fun is that? You'd think they were Arctic Monkey fans, but really, it's an 1800s star patch. Yeah. Gotcha. The reason for these patches, and sometimes having more than one, is because they were commonly used to cover up smallpox scars. Yeah, again, 1800s. They were made out of silk velvet and applied with glue, so pick your spot and be confident with it. The patches were dark black because they were meant to make your pale skin pop, you know, that Victorian era pale ghost look. The position of these patches could also determine your political allegiance. Yeah, who knew? Like your left, my right, hang on, we gotta get on the same page here. Historian Joseph Addison took note of these positions when observing two parties from the 1800s. One party had patches on the right side of their face and the other had the opposite. Yeah, one side starts losing the argument when you're just like, I'm just gonna flip that over real quick. See ya.
Number 5. Dawn of the punch card. With the Industrial Revolution on the horizon, many things were about to change. Probably the most obvious at the time was factories. While not the first, Richard Arkwright's Cromford Mill in 1771 is what most resembles a modern factory today. Cromford Mill was the first water-powered cotton spinning mill and initially employed 200 workers. It ran day and night with two 12-hour work shifts, the gates being locked at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., permitting no late arrivals. Oh, he likes to keep a tight schedule. Yeah, I can see the beginnings of a modern factory, alright. All you're missing is Bezos and a couple of drones to make it modern. All jokes aside though, these early factories changed the very fabric of not only Britain, but also the world. I mean, where would we be today with all that lovely pollution and those great and fair working conditions? I bet there was benefits too. Number 4. The golden liquid. You drink liquid and then it's gonna come out of you. It's simple, it's science. But sometimes other fluids need to be drained. Sometimes you can have difficulty using the little boys' room. Personally, I'm still learning how to put down the toilet seat. I haven't quite figured that one out. How to make pee when a person cannot pee. Portly founding father Benjamin Franklin thought to himself as he was holding a kite in the rain. This is something I learned, which I didn't know, is that he invented the flexible catheter. Yep. Next time you feel a little weird because a tube is being inserted into a sensitive area, you can thank the man on the $100 bill. Invented in 1752 in order to aid his brother with bladder stones. It's strange though, you think of a guy inventing other things, but in reality, it's a really important invention and something that's very common in the medical world today. I just hope to stay healthy long enough so no tube has to go near my founding father. Number 3. Pseudo-cool. Okay, so back in the 1700s, food was really hard to keep. For example, meat is packed with a salty brine in order to preserve it. It either has to be shipped overseas or last long enough through a cold and brutal winter. But plans for refrigeration were being drawn up, specifically the idea of vapor compression refrigeration. Not exactly the fridge that's in your kitchen today, considering there's still no main harnessing of electricity, which makes fridges run, but a brilliant idea nonetheless. While the fridge we know was still far away, it's crazy to think in the 1700s we had serious plans for one. While this was being developed, food was kept near lakes and snows in the winter. Runoffs from mountains were often used to keep drinks cool. I think this is something we all take for granted. I mean, could you imagine drinking room temperature milk or having a beef dinner that tastes saltier than salt? Looking back through history, it's interesting to see how humans persevere. As much as I love food, I don't know if I could stomach food from the past. Thank goodness we don't eat anything gross today. Hey man, do you have any canned cheese left? I'm kinda hungry. Number 2. Ebony, ivory, living together in harmony. I honestly thought this one was older than the 1700s, but hey, here we are, invented in the year 1700 by a musically inclined Italian gentleman named Bartolomeo Cristofori. Unhappy with what was going on at the time, he decided to spice it up by changing out a few parts of some common instruments, and started using little hammers that strike quickly on chords and come back in hopes they would not dampen the sound. A little fine tuning here and there, and bada bing bada boom, you got a piano. I would attempt to make a joke about the piano, but let's be honest, no piano, no Elton John. No jazz, no Frank Sinatra. If you're asking me, that's a big problem. Number 1. ABCs. As someone who struggles with reading, this one makes me want to hide under my covers at night. I spent countless hours as a kid learning to read, and oh man, the phonics lessons were brutal. And thanks to this invention, I can blame it all on the 1755 invention, the English Dictionary. Yep, that's right. One of the most influential too. Written by Samuel Johnson, it took 7 years to compile all the words I can't pronounce. He was commissioned 1,500 guineas for the project, which is worth about £250,000 today. Until the completion of the Oxford Dictionary 173 years later, Johnson's dictionary is considered to be the preeminent English dictionary and a huge achievement in scholarship. I mean, you gotta give the guy credit for writing this. Imagine writing an English essay for 7 years. But then again, £250,000 for some of my writing also sounds pretty good. All I have to do now is learn to read and write
Starting with the K car. Oh yeah, these babies saved early 80s Chryslers from financial decimation. Remembered fondly for being front drive, inexpensive to produce, and absolutely plebeian, this efficient series was versatile and it had many variants. It was designed to be an economy car with limited engine choices, primarily a dinky 4-cylinder engine claiming between 30 and 40 miles per gallon. The K car was the basis for multiple Chrysler vehicles once the launch of the Reliant and Aries standard entry-level vehicles pulled them out of the financial ground a little bit. There were the Dodge Aries, the Plymouth Reliant, the Dodge 400, and the Chrysler LeBaron. By the mid-1980s, however, the decision proved itself successful, with over 50% of Chrysler's profit coming directly from the K-car brands. Naturally, you could give it the classic 80s do-up. The snazzy wooden belt around the outside, the CB radio, the Landau roof, and even velour bench seats with button tufting. Ah, the 80s. As disrespected as it was versatile, the lowly K-car spread its plebeian roots and survived until 1995. For those of us who didn't see it in person, you most definitely have in movies and TV such as The Breakfast Club's Red Dodge Aries and the cool Chrysler LeBaron convertible in St. Elmo's Fire. Turn your lawn into a Trojan battlefield by playing Lawn Darts, a game where you punt a 4-inch metal spike with a handle across your lawn and ideally not into your neighbor. Childhood. Alright, so this nightmare product didn't origin in the 80s, hell it wasn't even from the 70s. Lawn darts go as far back as 500 BCE Greece and are obviously inspired by the battle and hunting weapon a spear, which is known to be given a charging or spinning start before being thrown. They were banned in 1970 initially by the Consumer Product Safety Commission, but the manufacturers challenged the ban and a compromise was reached wherein a lawn dart could no longer be marketed or sold as toys or in toy stores and had to contain the following warning: not a toy for use by children, may cause serious or fatal injury, read instructions carefully, keep out of reach of children. But it's the 80s when children could do and did do whatever they wanted with reckless abandon without any supervision. Naturally, this was the time lawn darts became a booming trend once more and fell into the hands of the irresponsible. There are 3 known deaths relating to lawn darts. The father of one victim made it his mission to get the game re-banned. His campaign had the Consumer Commission re-evaluate the injuries and deaths lawn darts had caused, and oopsie, they had misidentified how many injuries there were that had to be updated in statistics. Turns out from January of 1978 to December of 1986, lawn darts were responsible for an estimated 6,100 hospital emergency room treated injuries, and approximately 81% of the victims were under 15 years old. So yeah, in 1988 the commission voted to ban lawn darts sale completely. Now that we're done spearing the neighbors, let's play some video games on the ColecoVision. The 80s saw the advent of so many video games that we love now: Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Super Mario Bros, Tetris, to name a few. So after nearly bankrupting itself in 1978 with the overstocked and failed Telstar units, Coleco once again entered the console market looking to dethrone the Atari 2600 and the Intellivision, the current kings of the video game hill. The ColecoVision was released in 1982. It boasted amazing specs for the time, which showed in its arcade conversions. They did 2 things to secure their success. First, the Atari 2600 contained no patented material and was made up all of off-the-shelf hardware, so ColecoVision's expansion module 1 was essentially an entire 2600 which could fit into the Coleco's expansion port, aka they stole the 2600's games without stealing them. This gave gamers access to Atari's large library of games on a newer, better device and fueled interest to swap over to the console. Secondly, Coleco reached out to Japanese-based company called Nintendo, paying $250,000 for the rights of super popular arcade game called Donkey Kong, which would become the pack-in game with the console. Between its release of August 1982 and the Christmas that year, ColecoVision sold more than 500,000 units. The console actually only went out of use when the manufacturer just shifted focus to computer games. How about we do some arts and crafts? We can use puffy paint. Back in the times where custom clothing wasn't as easily orderable online, puffy paint was amongst the hottest ways to adorn your garb with personality, alongside fabric markers and bedazzlers and airbrush and tie-dye, of course. But puffy paint took it up a notch. Unlike 2D markers and overdone rhinestones, this paint went on wet, and as it dried it lifted to become quite literally puffy. Different levels of puffy could be achieved with different paints. Really sucked when you wanted a giant pink flower to be puffy, but giant puff didn't come in pink colors. It was even better if it was glow in the dark, since visiting a roller rink without some kind of glow fashion was practically a crime. Now you could match your favorite roller skates during disco hour. Yeah, puffy paint truly turned your favorite shirt into a 3-dimensional work of art, and it only started cracking and peeling off after the second wash. Amazing. A sleepover favorite was the horror hotline fad. Hotlines were a big thing in general during this time. Even kids' channels were advertising calling in to talk to your favorite cartoon character for a credit card fee that would have your parents ready to toss you out of the house. Horror hotlines in particular though, those were huge. They were genuinely 900 numbers, a premium high-rate telephone number that is charged by the minute. These lines didn't become profitable for the average person to run until 1987 when AT&T launched a national call program allowing people to make money privately off of 900 numbers. Prices were often set up at $2 for the first minute and then smaller but still substantial sums for each minute afterwards. For horror stories, this is perfect. You could keep your listener on the line, building anticipation and fear in a story that keeps them hooked, willing to pay another few cents just to hear the end. Some examples of these numbers were 1-900-909-DARE, based off of the 1976 Evil horror movie that is literally about being possessed through a horror hotline, 1-900-490-DEAD, which was a zombie hotline, 1-900-660-FRED was used to listen to the terrifying dialogues of Freddy Krueger. I could go on, there's truly hundreds of these. 900 numbers tapered off due to the increased regulation in the mid-90s. This is because even though these numbers, very obviously aimed at children, did instruct anyone under 18 to ask parents for permission before calling, most did not. This resulted in some exorbitant phone bills and angry parents. The FTC made it illegal in 1993 to advertise 900 numbers to children under the age of 12 unless it was educational. Thankfully, adults are still able to use them for their version of entertainment, if you catch my drift.
Number 5, the spaghetti fork.
Ma, make sure you put my special spaghetti fork on the table. I need to eat my pasta and gabagool.
Italians and lovers of the best cuisine on earth, in my opinion, I love Italian cuisine, get ready to cringe. The twirling spaghetti fork is a battery operated fork that twirls when you push a button, so you no longer suffer the burden of twirling your own spaghetti. Listen, I'm a big dude, I'm lazy, I love staying in after a long week of work and playing video games, probably my favorite thing to do. Yeah, sometimes I order in because I don't feel like getting up, but not twirling mom's spaghetti? Come on, twirling the spaghetti, I argue that's the best part. No dinner with no-no should require AA batteries in my opinion, I'm just saying.
You bring a fork, why you bring us a fork?
Number 4, hydrogen blimps. It really must have been something to witness humans gaining flight. Something so previously impossible was now not only possible, but something that you had to pay money for, which is how you know it was very successful. Large jumbo jets full of croc-wearing tours headed to Slav attractions was still a thing of the future. We're not there yet. This is still the early 1900s. We'll get there. So how do we get people to places in large numbers and still manage to be opulent? Said a bunch of people in the early 1900s. Airships, said Germany, who took the blimp game to the next level. However, a lot of these blimps made a cut in their design, if you will. To help save on money, the airships were filled with the much more cheaper hydrogen, which in large quantities is extremely volatile. The Hindenburg is a great example. Well, we could fill it with a safe fuel, but it's really expensive, but we could fill it with the fuel that could destroy the whole thing, and that's like 10 times cheaper. Well, I'll fill it with that then, why would you not? Number 3, flying car. Maybe it's because we love the idea of breaking new ground, setting precedents, or we really just want to live with the Jetsons. It was a cool cartoon. The Mizar flying car was designed by a group of engineers in the early 1970s, using the very famous Ford Pinto, like previously mentioned, because, well, it sucks on the ground, so it's gotta be good in the sky, right? Right, that makes sense. Well, no. Besides the mechanical issues, it would be a hard sell as, well, you know, the average American doesn't have flying experience, or not to mention a runway in their backyard. Plus, we have trouble with drones today. Imagine if it was raining Ford Pintos. Yikes. Mom, there's another Ford Pinto in the living room! It wouldn't go very well, would it? No. Number 2, the pet rock. This one's so stupid. It's just a rock. Legit, that's all it is. A fad about buying a rock and naming it. Oftentimes including those little googly eyes to make you believe it's alive, because yeah, okay. It's a ridiculous invention, it has no use. However, what it actually is a lesson in great marketing. Something weird enough that can be marketed quite easily, sold at an affordable price, and something that is already familiar with the people everywhere. So it actually makes sense, even if it is a bad invention. And number 1, this one, it's just so true, the Segway. About 15 years ago, these bad boys were all the rage. Basically, it's an electric scooter on 2 wheels with a handle to lean forward and lean back, or perhaps reverse. While there was some success in malls and airports, there wasn't that many in public. The main reason? Well, it's no different than a scooter or a bike, really, and well, it kind of feels like an attempt to reinvent the wheel when we don't need it. Also, in 2022, how many people do you know that have a Segway? Seriously. And if someone pulled up in a Segway to your hangout, it'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would.